Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on the time you are watching this course. My name is Nehemiah Wekesa, and I'll be your instructor for complete React course. But then before we start, I kindly ask you guys to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like and share this video to your friends or any tech enthusiast. I will appreciate so much so that this channel can also grow. And apart from this YouTube channel, we also have the WhatsApp community where we usually share updates, material, or anything there, including the opportunities. Apart from the YouTube also and the WhatsApp channel, we also have the TikTok account called ThemeContext. You can follow us there. We also have the Facebook page, and then we also have the LinkedIn page. You can also follow us on those platforms, those accounts. I will highly appreciate so much. Now, I say that we are going to learn React complete course. I'm going to explain everything, but then to be in a good position, you need to have some knowledge on the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if you do not have those skills, we have full complete courses on our LMS. We have these courses there for the HTML, there's CSS, there's HTML, there's JavaScript, and many other courses, including this React. There's a write-up of the same on the LMS. And then also for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we also have it on this YouTube channel. We have the playlist called courses. You can go there and find the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript complete course. Although I'll be creating another version, the updated version of these courses. But then you might want to check on those before coming to React. Otherwise, I'm going to explain each and everything here. So HTML is like is the markup language. Is the one that defines, for example, these headings. For example, is going to define the link, the paragraph, or whatever you're able to see it here. So those structures, you're using the HTML. And then now the CSS is now a tool to style it. For example, to make this one to be a header, these cards, and all that. So the CSS is for the layout and styling. And then now JavaScript is the one that's now manipulating the DOM. It's now manipulating the HTML document. You can use it to change the elements, to change the color, styling, and all that. So you'll be using now JavaScript is a programming language to manipulate the DOM. Now, what do we mean by DOM? DOM, it is actually it is a tree-like representation of your HTML document. So like when you have some HTML content and then you are going to run it and your browser is going to load your HTML, it's going to create an object called DOM. It's going to create a model called the DOM, the document object model, and that's going to represent your entire elements in your page in some kind of an API. Like you have your HTML content, you've written, for example, the HTML code, and then when you run it on the browser is going to convert that HTML into a model called DOM, which is like a document object model. And then from it, it can go to the browser engine, and then you'll be able to see the graphical user interface, and at the same time you can be able to manipulate the DOM. And let me try to put it this way so that you can understand what is a DOM. Now I'll use an example of actually DOM is going to follow the principle of the object oriented on any programming language. Like Python, for example, let's assume that you have a class like car. A car could be like a blueprint for creating out the object. So let's assume that a car is a class. So a car can have properties like, for example, the tires, the make, the colors, or those physical properties that all the cars must have. Like all the features that all the cars, irrespective of the brand, they must have. So like, for example, it can have a color, it can have the tires, and all those. These are the properties for a car. but you can have different instances of the car. For example, you can say you have a BMW car, you have, for example, a Toyota car. So these are the instances of the car. But and all of them, they have what these properties, which is a universal, which are universal, like these are the properties that define this as a car. But then now you can have different instances of the car, like Toyota, BMW, and also different models of each. So these are the instances. And then now each car can have actions, like for example, you move, you can stop it. So these are the actions now. So in this context, when you write the HTML document, whenever you're writing some HTML, the structures of pages, from the HTML to the head to the body and all those elements. So when you write that program or that code, then we have the primary class that is going to define everything within our that document that we've written there. We have the main class. You can just define it as like an imaginary class there called node. And then from the node, you can have the elements. So you have different elements on that HTML code you've written. And then now from the HTML, which you will now be inheriting from the node class. So this HTML, so this element class also can have the classes under it, like the HTML element. So the HTML element is now inheriting from the from the element. And then also from this HTML element, you can have now different elements, like for example, the HTML paragraph heading, the HTML heading element, the HTML link elements. So these are the classes. And then what are the properties? Properties, from those elements, you can have something like for example, those attributes, for example, the styles, or maybe the href, like those attributes you can pass whenever you are defining an image. So those are the properties on these elements. And then now from these elements, you have these properties on the elements. You can also have what the instances under these classes that have the properties and all that. And the primary one at the root level is called document. So whenever you're trying to create a HTML and then you're going to render it, so by default, the object that's going to be created is called the document. So the document is going to be like at the first instance, or maybe the first object that is going to be created from the root class, from the node. So from this document, it's like now the instance under those classes that I mentioned. Then from it, you're able now to manipulate everything, literally everything from that HTML document. You're able to manipulate, for example, the elements, the content, the styling, or any other thing. So I believe you have now an idea of what I meant there. So the DOM is like now that model that is going to be created whenever you're going to run that HTML. So when you run the raw HTML on the browser, then the browser engine is going to convert everything within your HTML into some kind of an API or some DOM, which you can be able now to manipulate it. You can be able to manipulate. And how do you manipulate it? You can use the JavaScript language to manipulate that DOM, of which now it includes, for example, updating the element content, the styling, the attributes, or whatever you wish to do with within now that DOM. So JavaScript is the language that I use to do that. But then if you wanted to build a complicated system now to use the vanilla JavaScript or maybe the raw JavaScript, then it will require a lot of code, for example, to manipulate, for example, the display, for example, the styling, and many things. Like you'll need to have a lot of code, and that to manage it is going to be quite hectic. So the Meta team came up with a framework called React. So React, it is a JavaScript kind of a framework, kind of a library. Remember, library and a framework, they're almost the same. You can consider a framework like a roadmap to achieve something. Like for example, let's say someone tells you, for example, gives you a direction from here to point C, maybe they will tell you go through point B to reach C. So they have given you a direction, but then now the walking or maybe going there, it is by yourself. But then a library could be considered as a solution, or maybe a building solution. Let's say you are trying to solve a program that can sum 1 plus 1. So if you manage to write that program and it was, let's say, a bit complicated, so like instead of you repeating the same thing in future, you can save that code somewhere in a module, so that in future you'll be able to just use it. You'll just reference that solution that you've written. So that solution that you had written in that module could be considered as a library. So a library is like an already made solution. So for you, you will be using that solution. But then a framework is kind of a roadmap, and then now it will be requiring you to do now the actual work. Remember, the library, the solution is already there, you're using, but then a framework is like a roadmap, so you're expected to do the everything by yourself. No, not more like they have given you the roadmap, but then now you need to do now the actual logic by yourself. For example, let's say someone gives you a direction, they will just give you the direction, but then walking it is by you yourself. So they have given you like a similar way or maybe an approach to achieving something. So framework is more of a roadmap, more of a guide. And then now you can have the libraries under it. So in React is a framework, but then within it you have now the libraries that are going to help you like speed up the development, the development of your application. So within the React, we have the React library, we have the React DOM and many other things that we are going to also talk about them in a few. So like it's going to create for you a very simplified way to managing or maybe creating your interactive web application using React or TypeScript. TypeScript is like a cleaner version of JavaScript, but then on this one we are going to use the JavaScript with the JSX. So other things we are going to explain as we write the code. You have an idea of what React is, and with that knowledge, then we can go straight to the installation of the dependencies, and we'll begin to work on it straight away. So before you use React, you will actually need to have Node on your system. Node is like a runtime environment where now JavaScript is going to run from. So you need to go to node.nodejs.org, and then you'll go to the downloads, and then download for your operating system. You can find the operating system here. Like by default it's Windows. You can select, for example, Mac OS, you can select the Linux, you can select this other one, but for me this is Windows, so I'll be using this one. Now for me, I'm not going to install because I already have it in the system, but what you do, just click on it, then it's going to download on your downloads folder, and then it's going to go to your downloads folder or whatever directory where your downloads will go. Then once it is downloaded, you will double click on it and then install it. If you're on Mac, you can just move it to the application folder and then follow those steps, and then it will be up and running. No, like I will just need to run. Do you know how you usually download all the open source programs? Now the other thing that we will need to have, it is the editor where we'll be writing out the programs, the code. I say that for you to learn this React, you need to at least have some knowledge on the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So by now you know that you'll not be writing the code on Word. You need to have dedicated platforms or editor where you are writing the code, and one of the editor is Visual Studio Code. Is a very powerful IDE. So this is the one that we are going to use in this case. So you are going to download also for your operating system. You're going to download for your operating system, and then once you download and then you install, when you install to successfully, you'll have this logo. Remember, it is code. In fact, just search for VS Code download, and then use this link here. So it is code.visualstudio.com. You can pause the video, type this link, and then download this software. It is the editor or the IDE that we are going to use. So once you have it, you can first of all confirm if you have Node in your system, because I will say that this is the most this is the dependency that we are going to require here. So what you'll do, go to the command line tool, like a command prompt on Windows or a terminal on different operating system like a Mac, Linux. You can just go to any terminal and then do this. Just type there node dash version, a node, then space a dash version. So if you're able to see the version, then it will mean that you're good to go. But then the latest version here, I think it is it 24 point 20? No, this is the current version. It's 25, but then I'm using this one at the moment, 22.14. But for you, you can use the latest. There's no problem, it will still work. Only that I have other programs that are depending on this one, so I don't want to update now. But for you, I use the latest version, it will still work. So once you have the node on your system, you have the editor. So the other thing, you need to have what the directory where your project is going to be placed. So go to your file explorer, and then for me, I don't know why I like placing my projects on the desktop, but then for you, you can place it anywhere. And then let me find this YouTube courses folder, and then here I'm going to create here a folder. I can call it, for example, React course. So this is the folder, but then for you might call it, for example, project. You can call it a project, but then because for me I'm teaching, this is not like an actual project. So let me just call it React course. But then now in the inside, I can have now a different project. So you can navigate to this path using the CLI, or maybe if you are on Windows. Okay, I think let me give you the best way, the easiest way. So if you are on, you have successfully installed the VS Code, you can just open it. And then when you open it, you'll have an interface similar to this one. You might have the interface similar to this one, only that you might be having some welcome screen. You might want to close it. And then also for me, I changed the theme here for my eyesight. I don't want to use, for example, different themes, for example, especially the white theme. So how do you change that? You go to the files here at the top, you go to preferences, and then to the themes, and then color them. I know maybe if you'll be in the white mode, I don't know, let's say white mode. So this is the white mode, but for me, I use this dark theme. You might use you can just go around checking individual, but then for me, I'm going to settle with this one. This is the one that I'm used to. And then the other feature that you also want, you can also configure, it is this autosave feature. Like when you write the code, it's going to be automatically saved, so you not need to manually save it. So enable this autosave feature. So once you have configured your VS Code to work well for you, then that folder that we have just created, we can go there and open it. So you can go to the files, then open folder, then find the desktop. Then for me, I'm going to go to these YouTube courses, and then now this is the folder that I'm going to open. So I'm going to select the React course folder, then I'm going to open here on the VS Code. So I've done this intentionally so that I may not worry you with using the CLI to navigate to the folder and opening the VS Code on that folder. So once you have opened that folder, then here at the top we have a terminal. Here at the top we have a terminal. So click on the terminal and then a new terminal. When you click on it, it's going to open the new terminal. Maybe your default terminal or a command line could be PowerShell. This one, it has opened with the command prompt. So either ways, the command that I'm going to give you is going to work. Now we say that before you use React, you need to have the node in your system, and I demonstrated how to access node, how to download and install earlier. So once you have the node in your system, then you are good to go. And guys, we have several ways to create the React application. One is using this npx create npx create and then hyphen react hyphen app, then app name. Now for me, I usually do full stack apps, so I can have the backend on a server-side language, and then now the front end or with React. So mostly I usually call my backend, just call it backend, then the front end I call it front end. But you can give it a good name. You can just give it a good name. It's only that I'm used to these names. But then give it a name. So when you run this command, it's just a one command that's going to create everything for you, including installing the modules and all the dependencies, and giving you that structure, the simple structure. But I'm going to use another way called using the Vite. So with the Vite, we need to use the node package manager to install it. So we'll be writing here npm, not npx this time. So it is npm, then create create and then Vite add specific version, or if you do not have a specific version, you can say latest, then the app name. For example, we call it front end. I'm going to call it front end. So it is npm. Remember, when you're using the Vite, it is npm, not npx. Npx, it was for the create React app format, but then this is npm create, and then Vite at whatever version, or if you do not have a specific version, you can say latest, then the app name. So for me, I'm going to call it front end. So when you run it, and then it's going to begin the creation process. Then it's going to prompt you to accept several steps. So the first step here is going to ask you to accept to install this Nini. It is asking me to need to install the following packages: create Vite 8.0.1.0. I will type there yes, Y to stand for yes, then I will click enter. Then again, it's going to prompt me to choose which language I'm going to use for my React application. So it's going to install this dependency first. Then it's going to ask me if I want to use to create the application with vanilla JavaScript, like this, the plain JavaScript. Then, for example, you want to build your application with the plain JavaScript, so that is vanilla. If you want to use Vue, is a framework. But then in our case, we are going to use this React. So you're going to use the arrow keys on your keyboard to go up or down. So I'm going to select this React, and then you click enter. So when you click enter, again, it's going to ask you, you're going to use that React with which language. So in this case, we are going to use the NPX. NPX stand for not NPX, actually the JSX. We're going to use JavaScript with the XML. So here I'll scroll down, and then I find JavaScript plus React compiler. Let me use that one, JavaScript plus React compiler, or maybe you can just say JavaScript. Let me use JavaScript plus React compiler. So you will click enter once you've selected it. Then it's going to ask me use roll down Vite. This is experimental. You also can just say no. Let me just say no. And then here install with the npm and start now. Then you can just click on enter, and then it's going to begin the installation. It's going to install all the dependencies that are required for this application to run. All right, so once it has completed, you can click on this link to open. You can click on this link to open your application that you've run. Let me stop. Actually, to break this server from running, you can click on the Q. You can click on Ctrl+C to break the terminal. Then you type there Y. So you're going to click on what? You're going to click on Control plus C to break the server from running. Then you're going to select Y. So once you are here, actually to clear this history, you're going to use the CLS if you're on command prompt or Windows like PowerShell. Those Windows CLI. So here I need to navigate to this front-end application that has been created here. So I'm going to do the cd change directory front-end. So once I'm in the front end, now the command to run this application here, the command that you're going to run here, once you have navigated to this front end application, the command it is npm run dev. So the command is what? npm run dev. Then you click on enter. When you click on enter, then it's going to open or generative for is going to start this server, and then you're able to see the React on the front end. So when you click on this link, when you try to have on it, it will show you the link to open it. So I'm going to click on it, and then okay, in fact, let me try to reduce many things here so I can just have my Vite application. Yeah, so now you can see we're able to we have the Vite React. So we use Vite to create this React application. So now in case, for example, you want to change anything there, for example, if you want to change some statement there, for example, let's say you'll go to this application. Actually, we're going to discuss everything in details just to show you that it is actually running. I'm going to go to the front end, that application, then to this src folder, and then within it, I'll go to this JSX. And then now here I can change anything, then you'll see it's going to reflect automatically. For example, let me say this is my first React app, and then when I go this other side, you'll see it's saying this is my first React app. Let's try to also change this statement there at the top. So we can go there, and then let's try to modify. For example, let's say, for example, React application, and then this other side you can see it is modified. So guys, let me try to explain some few things here before we officially start. Now this is the application that we have created called the frontend. Then within now the first folder here you are seeing it is the node modules. This like now the libraries that we are using or dependencies we are using. So when you install them, they are going to be listed or maybe listed on these node modules. So when you install them, they are going to go on these node modules. Like these are the dependencies. Whenever you are installing anything that you are going to use, is a library for the React application is going to be listed or maybe installed on these node modules. Then now this public, you can have that you can have all the media files that you wanted to use in your application. You can have it there, but then here it's having that by default. This like that favicon that is here at the top that's being it will be used on the index HTML. This one here at the top. Just an image that is going to be used there, the logo. Then now we have this src. So basically this is where you're going to have all your this is where you're going to have all your the components like this, like now the elements that we are going to use. I'm going to come to it in a few, and of course it has come with the git ignore. Don't mind about this one now because this involves git and github. I will talk about it later. Also don't mind about this configuration here. These are slint.config.js. Don't mind about this one. But then we have this index.html. So this now is the document that I was trying to talk about earlier, that HTML page that we were talking about it earlier. So it said that JavaScript can be used to manipulate with the DOM, and we talked about the DOM in details earlier. So this is the HTML document, of which when you try to render it on browser, the browser engine is going to convert this HTML to to a model called the DOM. And then now from that DOM, which is like an API, you're able to manipulate it with JavaScript, with some methods you can use to manipulate. Like for example, you can use the get element by ID and try to do whatever you wish to do there. So by default, it has configured this thing for you. And then you notice that this script is here at the very bottom. Why is it here at the very bottom? And by the all the JavaScript files you want to make sure that they are all here at the bottom. Why? Because they say like the browser engine usually convert this HTML into DOM before JavaScript manipulates it. So for example, if you have JavaScript here at the top, then it will be trying like to manipulate what doesn't exist. So you might have some issues there. So when you have it here at the bottom, it means that you have all your HTML content above. Then now you're trying to execute now JavaScript after you have already rendered the DOM, the actual HTML stuff. So JavaScript will be here at the bottom to be executed like once everything has been rendered successfully. And then you can see on this script file, the type here is a module, and then or a library, and then this is the path to it, the src. It is on this src folder, and then a main. Remember, you can also have it on the public. Actually, when you use the create React application, it will be listed on this public folder. But then this is because we're using the Vite, it's going to go to this src folder, and then we'll be able to see main.jsx. JSX is actually a JavaScript, but then allows you to use the HTMLs in the inside of which JavaScript is going to convert it, or maybe React is going to convert it to React is going to convert it into JavaScript objects like. So this is the file that we are having now, our JavaScript. So remember, we have this main ID called root, and then this ID is the one that will be referencing, or maybe will be tracking, and then be able to manipulate them. So first of all, this front end is like this header here at the top. This is the title that's here at the top here. But then let me try to change and see. For example, let me call it React. Okay, let me just call it React app. Just a simple name just to demonstrate why. Yeah, so you can see it has changed to a React application. So this is what this is the actual HTML that is being rendered there. So we have this ID here. And we'll be targeting this ID using the like I will be targeting it on a JavaScript file. Then I will be able to manipulate it, because we say that JavaScript can be used to manipulate the DOM. But then now the JavaScript will be using it with React. So we have some library that can help us to work smartly with these JSX, these are JavaScript. So just note that this is the script that is going to link our JavaScript to this HTML, that when you run on the browser is going to be converted into a DOM, and then JavaScript is able to manipulate that DOM. So the reference to it was on this src, and then main.jsx. So this is it. Then here at the top, we have what we have there. These are the libraries now. From the React library, we have the strict mode module, or maybe a kind of let me just call it module. And then also we have the create root from the React DOM, of which is this like the dependencies. Now remember, the dependencies are listed on this package.json. Actually, this one you don't need to touch anything there. You don't need to touch anything there. So you notice the dependencies here. For this application to run, we require the React and also the React DOM with this specific version, and it is you can see it is the one that we're using here, this strict mode. And then now we have these are create root, and of course we have also the CSS. But then later I'll be showing you how to use the Tailwind. Actually, we'll be using mostly Tailwind CSS, so we'll not use this one. And then now we also have now this app, which is like now the main.jsx. Now remember, we are only targeting one element here. We are trying to just manipulate this one element with this ID root, which now we are referencing it here. Okay, like we are, so this is like the JavaScript that we are using here, but within it we'll be passing what an external component with the help of this this method called create root. This create root is like a React is like a React function that's going to help us like target this specific ID and be able to manipulate this entire HTML. By the way, React is a single page application, so which means that everything is rendered under one document, this HTML. So we'll be targeting it through the create root, and then here we say that the root object that will be created whenever you are rendering this HTML document on the browser. That object or the instance is called the document. So from the document object, then you're able to call any function or any method within that object, and one of them is this get element by ID. This is to target the specific ID, and then within it we have also another a method called the render, and then within this render we can pass what our application, but then we are going to pass it under the strict mode. So this strict mode allow for example, in the event, for example, we have an error, it's going to stop everything and then it's going to display the error because of this strict mode. So in the event, for example, it's not permissive to errors whenever you're using this strict mode. So remember, it's just single application we are targeting with this idea of root. But then within it you can have several elements, like similar to a HTML. You can have single HTML page, but then within it you can have several elements, like you can see here. Within this body you have this div element, you can have the paragraph and all that. So this is the one page, but you can be able to render many things here, provided to make sure that everything is wrapped within single application. So this is the application, and we are going to talk about these components in details, but then just don't touch anything here on this main.jsx. So just leave everything the way they are. And of course we also have the primary styling, but we'll come to it later. So this is the app.jsx. JSX just stands for the JavaScript XML, like it allows you to use the HTML within your JavaScript. So first of all, even if you're using different components, remember all of them, they are being wrapped under one element called under one element, one primary element, like similar to how you can have, for example, this body, but then within the body you can have other elements under it. So like you're having single component, but then within that component you can have like many other components as well within it, within that one. So this is the app.jsx, and I will say this where now we are going to configure everything there. So this like now the components. I'm going to delete everything here. I'm going to delete everything there, and then just to explain what is a component. In fact, let me begin by explaining what is a component. Component, this is like a custom HTML tag that you're going to create. Remember, when you're using the raw HTML, you have those building elements, like for example the div, you have the paragraph, you have the head, you have the code, different type of elements or tags, the link, the list tags, and all that. Now the components, these are like now your custom made tags that you're going to use here. So so basically these components, I say that these are like your own. Let's say it is an e-commerce application. So you can have, for example, the user profile tag or an element. You can have the shopping. These are several different components. You can have, for example, the header and now the footer. So these are considered different components or those elements that I was talking about on the HTML, just as a reference to what are tags, what are components. I'm trying to just use an example of those HTML elements so that you can be able to understand what are the components. So first of all, we will need to have there are two ways to create a component or those elements. There are two ways. You can use a class based component, which is like the old way, or in fact they will not be using it. And then we have the modern ways using the function based component, which is much cleaner because of the hooks. But they will be talking about the hooks. So the hooks, they are going to make like they are going to simplify everything for you instead of using the class to define everything from the very scratch. So the function based component is going to be much cleaner and simpler for us to understand. So how do you create a function in JavaScript? We are going to use a function. Actually, just type there function. You're going to just type there function. Now, before using it, actually you need to make this file considered as a React application. So you'll need to first of all import the React here at the top. Mostly you'll not need to do that, but just import it. We said it's a library as well. So like React is a framework, and then at the same time it's also a library. So we're going to import React. We're going to import React from the React. Okay, it has already completed. Yeah, it has done the auto completion. So this is just there. Just it's not going to be used, but then we're just defining there so that it's going to be considered as a React component. So this is how you define a function, the normal way you usually define functions in JavaScript. So you're going to create a function, then we can use the Pascal case naming convention for a function. Let me call it, for example, something like a greeting. So this is the greeting function. Then now in JavaScript you will write these parentheses like this, parentheses. This way you can be able to pass those props. We'll talk about the props in details. So like this, how you define a function by the function keyword, the function name, then these are parentheses, and then after it, you are going to create, open and close these curly brackets. Now within these curly brackets is now where you are able to display or render your HTMLs. So usually render those HTML by the return statement. You're going to have the return statement there. Then you're able to have the HTML code. So for example, let's have, for example, the p tag, paragraph tag. So like this, we'll write here, for example, let's say this is a paragraph. So this is a paragraph, and so so we have created here a very simple function called greeting, and then within the greeting we have used the return statement just to render this HTML document. So this is just a normal HTML, but then since we are using React, it's going to convert this HTML element into a JavaScript object. So the React is going to convert this HTML element to JavaScript. That's why it is JSX, JavaScript XML. So it's going to convert these HTMLs into the JavaScript. So once you have created a component this way, for you to use it, you'll need to export. How do you export? You're going to use the command export default, and then now the what do you call it? The function name. So in this case, it is greeting. Actually, when you are exporting, you don't need to write these parentheses like this. You don't need to do that. It's already going to know the name. Like it's going to already know that this is a JSX file. Then you can terminate statements with this or semicolon. By the way, it's just a good approach. At the end of every JavaScript statement, you end with a semicolon like that. So like once you have done this way, then where you're going to use it, you need to pass this prop. Actually, you need to pass this function. First of all, let me go this other side. Now you can see we can't see anything. Okay, you can see it is displaying this is a JavaScript because this file was exported this other side. We have okay, export default and then a greeting. So when you go to the to this main.js, Then the file name is called app.js6, so we have just import app. But then now this time, what we exported was greeting. So I'm going to copy this greeting. We're going to have this. Remember, could be any other name. In fact, let me close this one. Remember, could be this just like a variable. Let me call it a greeting to be more specific. So I'm going to call it a greeting. And then where you're going to use it, you can have it here. So this way, there's two ways on how you can be able, because we say that these are like now custom HTML elements. So you can have the HTML elements, you need to have the start tag or the end tag. But then on this one, you can use a self-closing tag. You can use a self-closing tag. How do you make a self-closing tag? So you're going to write here the greeting, then at the end you'll be having now the /, then now this brackets like this. So this way, I can see it is displaying these messages. In fact, let me try to modify everything on these as CSS. Let me try to okay. Let me in fact clear everything this side, and then also there was another CSS, this one margin I'm going to give it 0. Okay, in fact, let me just clear everything there. Let me just clear everything there. So I've just deleted everything, every style in there. Then now you can see it is telling me this a paragraph. Then I said that in the individual component, you'll need to do it. You'll need to only render one HTML element. So for example, if you want to display, for example, more than 2, let's use a bracket so that we can be able to have more than one element like this. So within this return statement, I want to pass more than one element. So for example, I want to pass, for example, the h1, and then I'm going to say, for example, this is a paragraph or something, a paragraph. So you can see it is showing this other side. So if I will want to add in another text here, I'm going to get an error. When I run this way, you can see in fact it's displaying this error. You cannot do that in React because it needs to be like a single element. So it should be like a single element. So how do you avoid this one? What you do, you can wrap everything within a fragment or maybe a div. So you can have a parent element. For example, you can say div like this, and then every other element will be within this one. So within this one, now you can be able to have these other elements. Let me copy this one so that. So you're able to create the primary, the parent element. For example, we call it div or any other name. Sometimes you can even use the fragment there. Then now within the inside, you're able to have as many as you can. So provided you make sure that the outside these elements, it is wrapped under one main parent element. So remember, could be even a fragment like this. You can just use something like this or a div or whatever, provided it is wrapping your other elements. So elements that you'll be using within the inside, they should be nested. So you can see, and now it's going to display properly. It's going to display properly because we have nested, and then you can have as many as you can. You can have as many as you can. Then you can see it is displaying properly. So this is just a normal HTML. Let me try to make it a paragraph. So these are just like symbol HTML, only that now React is going to convert these HTMLs to be JavaScript objects. It's going to convert them to be the JavaScript objects, and then it's going to display them properly here on the. It's going to display them properly here on the web. So this is an example of a component. This is an example of the component, and I'm going to use the default one. I'm going to use the default one that was there, the default component which was app. Let me just maintain app, and then this other side I can still maintain app. So let me just change here to app for consistency, because I know also on your end it's going to get app. So I just want to go with that first. So this is like my first component. Now remember, we can have many elements, similar to how you can have, for example, the parent body. You can have the body, but then now within it, you can have many other nested elements. So the same way, on this app, you can have, okay, on React, actually, this application can have one component, but then under it, you can have like several other components under them. But then remember also, they should be rendered under one application, which is going to be this app, and this is the one that we are going to pass under this create root in React. So so I want us to create some applications. I'm going to create some components, and sometimes it is encouraged to use a folder where you're going to have all the components. Then now on their usage, you're going to just import them. So like, for example, we can have let me create now within this src folder. I'm going to create another folder called components, and then I'm going to list all the components within it. So for example, within this component folder, I can be able to create another class, okay, another component file. Let me call it greeting, and notice how I'm defining my, like, the name that I'm using is, I'm using the Pascal case convention. So greeting, for example, dot JSX or a JS or JSX, because we'll be passing some HTML in the inside or XML, but then XML is much more older, so it is HTML. So within it, I can have what? I can have my, let me return my greeting there. So I'm going to paste this one on this greeting component, and where is it placed? On the components folder. So now on this, now let me just have these two folders. So this component, it is within our this component folder, then now the file itself. So now if I want to use this component, what I will need to do is to import it. How do you import it? You're going to use the import keyword, which is a preserved word in JavaScript. You can use it to import modules. So import, and then you can say, for example, greeting, then from the path to it. So this first dot is going to represent the current directory. So the current directory here is src, and then from this src current directory, then / to specify another folder in the inside, which is now the components folder, and then from the components folder / now the greeting module, the file itself. So once you have it this way, then sorry, here we'll change here to app. Let me just change here to app. Remember, greeting is a separate component. I've created a separate component, but then now here the application is called what? App. It is app. So now here I'm going to render this greeting instead of like writing here manually. So for example, I can try to render this. I say that when you do it, it's like I've created like a custom HTML element. So you're able to use it the same way. For example, you usually use the HTML element this way, and then you close it. Only that will not be passing some elements within it, because it already has the content. So when you do it this way, then on this other side, you'll see that it's going to display this paragraph, and when I will change from this other component, from this greeting, for example, let me write here some paragraph. Let me write here paragraph, and then within this paragraph, okay, let me have the closing of the paragraph, and then I can have some text there, for example, lorem 10. We have some lorem text there, those dummy content. So you can see this is within the greeting component, but it's going to be rendered on the on our application. So you can, when I will refresh this other side, you can see it is displaying this message, this information here. It is because I've passed it here as a component. So let me now try to create another component so that you guys can understand what is a component in details. So again, within this SRC and then to the component folder, I'm going to create another one. Maybe I can call it, for example, something like footer. Within now this component folder, I'm going to create another one called, for example, footer.useEffect. So within it, I'm going to define my function with the function keyword, and then I can tell, for example, I can call it even footer, and then I can have, for example, my footer sorry, I need to use the curly brackets. I can have, for example, in this return statement, I can have my footer content there. You can use by their div as the parent element. Let me just this fragment there. Then under it, for example, you can have what, let's say this is a footer. So this is a footer. This is just a normal text. This footer I can have it on maybe H3. H3. This is a footer. So now, once you have created this component, for you to be able to use it somewhere else, you will need to export it. How do you export it? You're going to use this export default. Export default, then the function name, which is footer. Sorry. It's going to be footer. Remember, you don't need to write those closing the way you usually call normal function. In React, you can just leave it by that because it's going to be considered a module. So you don't need to write that extension. Like those function like that is going to be treated automatically as a function. But then you can close the statement with a semicolon like that. So once you've done this, then where we want to use it, we want to use this footer on this app.js. So here again, I will import this other module we have created, component we have created. So I'm going to use the import keyword, and then I'm going to say import footer. I'm going to import footer again from this components folder, and then the file is called the footer. So where we want to use it is here. Maybe after this content, I can have that component here. The way you usually display your HTML element, only that here we'll be writing here this footer, and then now closing like that. And then this other side, you can see now it is displaying this is a footer automatically. So these components, they were in different files, but then I've exported and I've used them on this one application because JavaScript expects to render just one JavaScript file. So you can have everything, then you're going to have all of them in one application, then it will be rendered on one main JSX here because it expects like just one JavaScript to manipulate it. So, but then it allows you to use several components within it. Now, apart from writing this content like this, like opening and closing, you can use a self-closing. How do you define a self-closing element? You can just write that greeting, but then at the end you can write the /, then that bracket, similar case here. Your component name, then a /, then the closing. So this way, I can see still it's going to. In fact, let me try to do something so that you'll be able to know it is working. So on this footer, let me say maybe second footer. The second footer, just to modify to tell you that it is working, so I can see it is displaying like this. So I believe by now you guys have understood what is a component and how it is used. So first of all, the HTML that a JavaScript needs to manipulate, it is on this index.html, where I provided this ID called root. Okay, like when you just create, it's going to create this ID root, and then we're going to manipulate this entire document using this ID. So like it's like a reference that we're able to reference this file and a specific element that we are going to manipulate. And I say that JavaScript should be executed here at the very bottom after this entire HTML elements have been executed. Why? Because for JavaScript to manipulate the HTML, it needs to have that DOM, of which is like a model that is created when you render this HTML on your browser. So when you're going to render this HTML on your browser, then the JavaScript in the browser engine is going to create what we call, is going to create a model called DOM, and then from the DOM you're able to use our JavaScript to manipulate it. You're able to manipulate it. That's why JavaScript should come at the very bottom after the HTML element. So we have linked this JavaScript to manipulate this HTML through this script element, and then this is the path to our JavaScript. So it should be one file. Remember here we are referencing one file, so it should be just one file that's going to manipulate this index.html, which is now here on this main.jsx main.jsx here. So it should be one file, and we are using this React library or function, okay, from the React DOM. We're going to React DOM submodule called client. We're using this create root function to target this specific ID or element and be able to manipulate it. So this React create root is like a function that is going to help us target this ID, this root, the file, the ID, and then from it we're able to render the content to display on this ID, which was initially empty here. But then now with the JavaScript we're able to manipulate it and give it some other content. So on this render, what we are passing here is this application, this app, only that we are wrapping here under the strict to allow the debugging, so that in case, for example, you have an error, you'll be able to see in real time the error because of this strict mode, so it is sensitive to errors. So we are passing just single application, but then this application we're importing from an external part, where under it you can also have the nested elements under it from this app, this app.jsx. We have it here, this function here is a component, but you can render many other things under it. You can render many other components, sub-modules, or maybe components, other elements under it. So we have created a folder for components, and then we're just importing, but we are wrapping them under this app. So we say that it should be just one, like a React is a single page application, but you can have several components or nested elements under them. Only that, make sure that you are wrapping under the parent element here. You are wrapping them under the parent element, and then you can have as many as you can. Now, the other thing that I want us to talk about, it is the props. Now, the props, this is like arguments in a normal JavaScript function, or maybe if I could try to explain to you those arguments on JavaScript before I come here, so that you may have a better understanding on the props. So let me try to create a new window, so that this one, the one that I'm going to create is going to be totally different from this one, just a separate window, just for illustration purposes. Let me create here a new window which is completely different from the other one, so that I can begin to explain arguments on a function, so that when I come to the props we'll be able to understand it well. So I'm going to maybe create a new folder for JavaScript specifically. Remember, this is unrelated. This is just only for demo purpose, to explain for you functions. You don't need to do anything there. Let me create a function, a folder. Maybe I can call it just JavaScript or functions. And then within it, I'm going to create here an index.html. Create a file called index.html, and then from this HTML document, I am going to create what I'm going to create. I'm going to link, first of all, on this HTML, I'm going to link here an external JavaScript. So let me just create, although you can use the inline, but then I want to just use the external one. call it main.jsx, no, JavaScript, because I want to demonstrate it with JavaScript, the function. So here I can link that external JavaScript, so I can have this script src this one, and then here I'm going to say main .js, that module. So then I can have some element here. So for example, I can have a div, just a div here, and then within this div I can have an ID so that I can track it with JavaScript. So I can say, for example, root or demo. Let me just call it demo. The ID is demo. So on this JavaScript, I want to manipulate this element. So first of all, I want to create just a normal function to explain how function and arguments work. So I'm going to write here the keyword for creating the function in JavaScript. Then the function name, maybe I can call it something like addition function, addition. And then now within these brackets, this is where I can pass now my arguments. So those variables, they are called parameters, for example, A, B. But then now the actual values for A and B, they are called arguments. So I can use them interchangeably. But then now here, I'm going to write what? Now my program to use this A and B. So I can say, for example, return maybe A plus B. So now to be able to render this one on the HTML, we can use a function to manipulate this DOM that will be created when you run this one on the browser. So the object, first of all, it is a document. We explained this one earlier, document. But then now from the document object, we have a method called get element by ID, which you can use it to do it, to manipulate the IDs, the HTML through the IDs. And what was the ID? It was demo, right? You see, it was demo. So then from this one, to target this element, also we have another one called another attribute under this element called the type of template you need to display. For example, if it's the HTML or maybe just symbol text. So this one I can use maybe HTML. Okay, let me just use the inner I don't know, text or HTML. Either ways it will work. So this one is more basic. So let me just use the inner HTML. So this one I'm going to assign this function call to it. I'm going to assign this one to it. But then now this one, it is expecting two arguments, A and B. So for example, I can say 100, and then that's the first argument for A, and then for B, maybe I can say also 200. So when you try to run this one on the browser, it's going to return 200, okay, 300. So this is how we are using now this function, or this is now how we're using now the function, but then with the arguments. Arguments, these are the information that you are going to pass when you are creating the function, and then how to use it, you need to provide those values. So the same approach on the props. Let me now close this one. Now on the props, now on these components that you'll be creating, these ones allows you to customize or maybe configure components, making them reusable for different data. So like assuming this is, let me go to the components folder. First of all, let me try to clear it first so that you'll be able to know where we are. So in fact, let me close this one, delete this one, so that we can stick to the front end, this application here. I'll go to the SRC and then to the components. But then on this greeting, to pass now the prop, let me clear this other thing. To pass a prop, you can use the prop keyword, though I'll talk about how you can be able to destructure so that you can use symbol things. So you need to say, for example, you need to pass here props. Props like this. Sorry, write just props. We said props are what? These are like now arguments to your functions. Then now let me try to use it. I can use a paragraph, maybe a paragraph tag, and then I can say, for example, um, hello. Now, if you want to use these prop or maybe these variables within now your text, you need to use a curly brackets like that. These are curly brackets, then you can be able to pass now your props. So for example, here you want to make a prop, for example, this greeting to be, for example, hello, and then it will be displaying name. So you need to say, for example, props dot now the variable for whatever nini you'll be using. For example, here will say props then dot name to be now the variable for the value that it will be receiving for this hello, and then for example the name is Nehemiah, it will be using our name. So where you want to use it, like on this app.jsx. So now within this, remember we define it in the greetings. So within now this greeting, here you write that that prop name that we created, which is name, but then now you'll be assigning now the value. So this was like a variable, a name was a variable, and then here you're trying to provide now the value or a parameter, then the value to that parameter. So what will be the value here? We can now write the name, for example hello, then it will be Nehemiah, Wekesa. Then it's going to display it dynamically on this browser. When I will go to this other side, you can see it's displaying hello Nehemiah Wekesa. In fact, let me do away with this other one first, this footer. Hello Nehemiah Wekesa. So on the greetings, we created a prop, and then where we want to use it, we want to use it on the app.js. So we are passing that prop name there with its value. So it's like I'm trying to give it a key value. Okay, like this, like the prop name, then this is the value to that prop. So more of a parameter and then the argument. So it's like you're trying to define a variable and then its value. But then you notice that here you, for example, let's say you have several, let's say you wanted to use something like the name, age, and many other things. So you need to use a lot of props. But then React allows you to destructure it. So you can be able to destructure these props such that you don't need to use these props all the time. So here, to destructure it, you need to use these curly brackets here at the top. Then you can just pass here the directory name. So when you pass name, on the usage, you'll not need to write these props again. You can just say name like that, then it's going to work. So now instead of the props, I've written the curly bracket now within this function. I've written these curly brackets like this, and then I've provided what the variable that I want. Now this one allows you to even use more without even worrying about the props. For example, you can have the name and then age. So on this one, for example, I can say hello Nehemiah. You are how many years old, or maybe you are okay. So I'll just first of all this age, and then now here this other side where I'm using it, I will now add in the value for age as well. So I'll say age, then I'll give it the value, for example, let's say 20. So now for this string, for the text, I'll write in brackets, for example, 20 like this. Yeah, so to avoid getting that error. So now I can see now hello Nehemiah, you are, let me say 20 years of age. Let me say 20 years, okay, years old. So actually I'm not 20 years old, but here you can also have as many as you can. So you can see, for example, grade. You can also have there, for example, something like a country. So you can have as many as you can. So for example, hello, hello name, you are, and maybe I can say, for example, and you come from, maybe I can say country now. Now remember, if you do not provide the values where you're using it, it's going to tell you it's not going to display anything there. So if you want to display something pale there, you need to also provide the values to it. For example, you can say country, and then you can say the country, then you can say the country, for example, let's say Kenya. Wait, this is a string, Kenya. From Kenya. Actually, for the text, you don't even need to write these curly brackets like this. You can just write it like that, and then it's going to display. Only for numbers, it was having an issue, so you need to write it in curly brackets. So whatever way, these are the prop values now. So I believe you've understood the props very well now. So these are like now arguments that you're going to pass on your components. So that whenever you're trying to use them, you need to provide those values. So when you want to make like your component more reusable, so these props allows you to give it like a different values wherever you want to use them. And sometimes with there you can also have the default value. So for example, like a country, if you do not want to provide, for example, all the time the country Kenya, you can have the default value. So on where you're trying to define now your props, you can directly assign a value to it. For example, country, you can give it some value directly here. For example, country, for example, let me use Tanzania. Let's say Tanzania. So here I've given it a value directly. So on this other side, it's going to use it directly. So the default value will work in the event, for example, you haven't provided this value. But then if you provide a value for the country, then it's going to use that value that you have provided. If you will not provide, then it's going to use that default value. So guys, the other thing that I want us to discuss, these are the React hooks. And actually these are what make React. And we will be discussing some of them. We are going to begin with the states. So similar to the approach we've been using on the props, like these are the information you can pass, you can use when you are creating a function. And then on the component that will be using this other component, you will need now to provide the values the other way. So they are more like parameters which are unchanged. You want to make sure that the parameters are just read only, and then where the function is being used now, you'll be providing the values to those parameters. They are called the arguments. But then in React, we also have another function called the states. They use states especially. But then the difference between the props and the states. So first of all, the props, these are like parameters that we are going to pass to a component. But then a state is more like the component memory. So for example, it can represent the data that can change over time. Unlike those are props which do not, they are read only. The states, this one can change over time, and when state changes, the component will update or re-render. We are going to talk about this one as we go on. But then in a nutshell, props you've learned, these are like parameters which are passed from the parent, which is just the read only, and then it will be passed to another component to the where it is being used. Where you're going to provide now those functions, just like parameters in functions. But then now the state, these are owned by the component itself and can change like variables inside the functions. So the most popular one for the state management, it is the useState. So we usually use the useState to manage the state of the components, or maybe a state of a particular function. Now let's assume you have a form. The initial state before the user fills the form, it will be empty. So the state of that form is empty. Then when they fill in the form, so it has now the data. So it was initially empty. So now it is tracking. It has some data in the inside. And then now when it tracks the data, then you're able to later, for example, send it to the API or something like that. So this one is going to track like a state of your code. Like if something happens, then it's going to re-render something like that. Now to use it, this is a built-in function in Python just to manage the state of your function based component. So from this React, we can as well have import those functions, but then to import the function, we're going to use it inside the curly bracket. So the first of all, we have imported this React, but then you can as well import that state, but then it's called the useState. useState from this React still. So once we have imported the function from the library React, so the first thing that you want to do is to declare the state variable that you want to use. So like in this one, okay, let me first of all try to do away with this stuff here, this destructured props, and then within now this return, now before the return statement, make sure that it is before the return statement you are having you are declaring the variable. So mostly you'll need to declare the the state with their const, but remember, even if you're using this const, it doesn't mean that this variable will not change. But then I just have the const, and then now we say that it takes two arguments. Actually, it takes two variables. It takes two things. First of all, the current value, and then now the setter, or maybe a function to update that state. So the initial state, and then a function that will update that state later. So for example, let's assume that I wanted to build a counter system. So you'll be having now the count, and then now the setter. Let's call it use count, or maybe set. Let me call it set count. Set count. So all of these I'm going to use this use state, use state. But now I will be initializing this function with the initial. Okay, this is a counter, so mostly the initial count will be 0 in this case, and then of course you can terminate a statement with semicolon like that. So we have done what we have declared we have declared our state, use state. So it has the initial, and then it has the setter, like a function to update it later, which we are going to use this use state. So we have initialized this use state with the 0, like we have initialized with 0. So you can have now the logic to update this one from 0 to something else. So here let me try to remove this one, and then maybe I can say, for example, let me say you have clicked something. How many times you have clicked? So to use a variable within your text, you need to write it in curly brackets. Then here I'll be saying now count. So by default it's going to use what? It's going to use a 0. You have clicked 0 times, but you can have a logic to update once the button is clicked. So we can have the button so that you can be able to click it, and then something is going to happen. So here I'm going to just write here my button, and then maybe I can write something like, for example, click me. Now, at the moment, when you click on this button, like nothing is happening, just a normal button. But then we are going to write those logics or functions that's going to trigger once, like it's going to update once you click on it with the help of the use state. So I can have the event handler. I can have an event here. Then on this button, I can use an on-click event, on-click event here, and then on this on-click event, I can use an arrow function on it. Now remember guys, I said that before you learn React, at least you need to have some basics of JavaScript. So here I'm going to use an arrow function, and then on this one On this one, I'm going to use that set count which was initially okay. Like I now to update the initial state here, which is defaulting to 0. Then now here, I'm going to use now that set count, and then I'll be providing the values that are going to update. So the initial state, which is now 0, which when I write here count, that count by default it is 0. But then when you click on it, instead of remaining to 0, we can update its state to something else. So here, when you click on it, we can increment with 1 so that it can say, for example, you have clicked me this number of times. So here we'll update from being 0 to something else like that. And then on this other end now, when you want to click on it, let me reload first. When you click on it, you can see it is updating now the count. So it is incrementing 1, 2. So you can see it is updating once you click on it. Now to explain some few things here, this useState that we have initialized here with 0, this is going to create a state with an initial value of 0 in this one. Remember, we have just demonstrated with an example of this counter, but could be something else. Maybe it could be a form. And then we have the count here. This count is the current state value, of which we're initializing it with the 0. And then now this set count, this is a function to update the state. So we have passed here as a variable, but it is a function whenever you're using this useState, like a function that will update this count, which was initial state, to something else. So this one is treated as a function. Now, the other thing that I want us to also talk about, they are called the use effects. The use effect. What are the use effects? So sometimes your components need to do something that go beyond the UI rendering. Maybe you want to fetch something from an external API. Let's say you have a backend application that is having your data from a database, and then you want to display it on the front end. So the use effect, sometimes they are called the side effects. They are going to help you to affect things that are outside the component. So you can be able to perform these side effects. Like for example, if you wanted to fetch something externally, the use effect is a function that can help you do that. So mostly you can use it for fetching data from a server, a backend server especially, and then sometimes you can even use it to set some subscription. You can even to use it to manually change the DOM, sometimes to even set the timers, and then also sometimes you can even use the use effect to save the data in the local storage. So like you can be able to cache your data into, like you can be able to save your data into the local storage so that you can be able to access it earlier. Instead of like saving it to the database, you can save it within the browser so that you can be able to use it later using the local storage there. And then guys, let me try to just help you know, or maybe demonstrate how it is used. Now, on this one, I'm not going to use an example of fetching an external API because this is fully front end. I don't want to go into the backend because I will need to have the API somewhere to be able to pull it. But remember, I'll be having many projects. I'll be doing them here on YouTube for free. That's why I say that you need to subscribe, guys, and also to support me by subscribing. But we shall have now the project where I'll be using now React and some backend technology to be able to pull some data from the database. But then here I can also import the use effect. So if you wanted to import another one, you'll be separating with the comma here. Then you can say, for example, use effect. Use effect like that. So once you have that use effect important, so here at the bottom, remember this use effect we are going to depend also on the on these states. So Here I'm going to use now this use effect that we have imported, unlike this other one where you had to initialize. This one you can use effect direct. So you're going to say use effect. Then here is a function to so that it needs to have the parentheses. So now within it, within this use effect, we can have some other function that we want to render, or maybe some side effect that we want to pass across. So I'm going to use an arrow function to achieve that. I'm going to use the arrow function here, and then on it, I'm going to write some from the document object. And by now you know what is an object. We demonstrated on the intro. So from the document, maybe I want to get the title. I want to get the title, for example. These are like now the attributes. These are like now the attributes under the document object. Then here I can now, from we know initially it is a React app. Then you are able to update it. For example, I can use this backtick here. Then I can say, for example, you have you have clicked you have clicked you have now. This one allows you to use now the variables inside your strings. For example, you have clicked you have clicked something, for example, count here. You have clicked how many times to, for example, that function. So again, let me go to the browser, and then you're going to see those effects on it. So on this other end, you can see now we have modified this title, which was initially a React app, but then now it is doing a counter. So we have used it to perform some side effects. So you can see now here on the title, of which is like a property under that object document. So now it is updating on this other end. So we have used the use effect to perform what those side effects. So guys, basically the other hook that we are going to discuss, and mostly this is the most essential one. This is the one that you must implement. Like it's a very serious one. So on this one, it is called the use context. So basically, the use context hook is going to help you share data across your entire app without like a passing props through every level, solving that prop drilling. So I'm going to demonstrate maybe the old way. Then I'll be able to demonstrate why this use context is very helpful. So normally, for example, let's assume that I wanted to use this prop. Wanted to use a prop. Let me try to modify things here. So this is my main. This is my main application. Before this return statement, let me try to get a variable here to an object. Let me call it, for example, user. This object, and then I'm going to have some key value pair there, and maybe I can say, for example, Nehemiah. And then, so this is where I'm trying to define some values to be used across different applications. But then now the main one is going to be, for example, this greeting could be, or maybe I can even change the name to be. I can change the name to be parent. Let me call it. Let me change here to be parent. Parent. Parent component. And then here I'm going to also change here from this. I'm going to call it parent as well, just to make sure that you guys understand. So this is the parent component. So here I have created here an object called user, and it is having the key value pair, this property's name, and then now the value is Nehemiah. So on this parent, I'm going to pass to it. I'm going to pass to it here user, user, I'm going to give it user. So this is on my parent. This is on my parent. So remember, I want to use it maybe at the children level, but I will need to first of all go to the main one and I give it some value so that it can drill down to where to the child, the grandchildren component I want to use it there. So again, if I will want to use okay, like on this parent now, I should be able now to pass this user. In fact, I've done it here already. So on this, no, it should be called now the parent. So on this parent, if I will want to use it, if I will want to use this value, like if I will want to pass to the next one, I will need to define it here. Remember, it was originally on this main app. And then on this parent, I will need to use it. I will need to pass again. So here on this parent, I will need to write, for example, the child class beforehand where it's going to be used. So I can say, for example, child, and then on this child, I can pass their user. User, I can be able to assign here to, for example, user as well. That user. So guys, you notice that here I'm going to do it. I'm going to, before I use it, I'm passing out these values beforehand. So on the user, so I will actually need to sorry, let me see where there's an issue. Oh, I forgot this part slash, sorry. Yeah, so like that. So okay, first of all, let me do away with this one. So that by the way, you actually don't need this one because it's already passed here on the parent class. So here, I actually don't need this one, this React. Let me just have it just to make to reduce some error. Remember, if I want to pass it to child, I will need to provide these values beforehand. And then now, let me change this footer to be now child. But then remember, when I'm going to the child, I have provided the props beforehand. So when I go now to this photo, let me try to just change it to, let me try to change it to a child, to child. So on this child component, so I'm going to as well inherit from this other one. So here, let me provide now the child. So here I'm going to just change here to child. So on this child again, I will need to provide the children, the values beforehand. So the children. So on these children, okay, no, we have child, then there's grand, yeah, sorry, not children, actually should be grandchild. So on the grandchild as well, I'll need to pass these values beforehand, before it is used. So now I can now go and create now this grandchild component, grandchild .jsx. So let's assume on the grandchild this is where now I want to use that props. On the grandchild this is where I want to use that props. So now you'll notice that before I reach to this, let me try to call it now grandchild. Let me call it grandchild. Yeah. Now this is like at the last component where I want to use it now. So here maybe let's say for example I can have just a symbol p tag. Here, then I can say, for example, hello, hello. But then now from this user, remember this user is an object. So within now the bracket, I can say, for example, hello, hello, and then user, and then now the keywords name. So dot name. So you notice, okay, let me say hello. Okay, there's something that getting an error here. Let me see. Oh, there's this extra bracket here, forward slash. So you notice I had to go all the way from this app to the parent, to the child, to the grandchild where I'm trying to use for me to just be able to see the values there. Yeah, so guys, what I've forgotten here, actually when I try to run here, actually I'll not see anything because I've forgotten to import now individual components. Actually, I was using before importing. So like actually on the parent here, I've done it well because I've already imported this parent. So here I'm just using what is already imported. But then on this parent itself, I forgot to import the child. Actually, I don't need this one because it's already on the main application. So I'll not need to have it again on this one. But I'll need to import this child before you say it. So I'll say import. I'll say import child. I'll need to import child, and then also on the child, since I'm using grandchild on the child, I will need to import the grandchild. So I'll say import grandchild, grandchild for so that I may be able to use it here, or I give it some prop. And then also on the grandchild actually I don't need to provide anything because this is like the last one that I'm going to use. So here I can say, for example, hello Nehemiah, maybe how are you today? How are you today? So when I do this way, when I go to this other end, you can see it's now displaying properly. So you can notice before I got this output, I had to go from this main application all the way to the parent component to the child, and then shared it to this grandchild. So like this symbol prompt, I had to pass it across components before I reach to where I want to use it. So this is very hectic and very tiresome. So this is where now the contexts are going to be very helpful, because now with the use context, you can just be able to create a main component. Let's assume that you wanted to use it on this grandchild without passing through these other things. So what I will need to do, let me try to go to this main application here first of all. On the main application, or maybe I can just create a context app somewhere. Let me try to make it simple so that you can be able to get it right. So on this folder, on this SRC, maybe I can create another component. Okay, another folder called context. And then within now this folder, I can create now a component for the context. Maybe I can call it, for example, test context. Sometimes it could be, for example, if it was dealing with things about, for example, the user, I can call it user context or a cat context or whatever. But then let me just call it test context dot JSX. So I've defined it here. So now on the main application, I will need to wrap everything within that provider. So here, what I will do here, I just need to import that context. So I can say, for example, import tests. Is it test context? Import test. Sorry, actually on this main application, so I will need to specify, for example, test context. Oh, first of all, I forgot to provide some content within it so that I can be able to export it. So here I'm going to import. So let me say import import. Actually, we usually use the create context to create those use context. So let me say create context from React, and then once I have it, I may be able to export it. So I can say export, and then const user context, no, not user context, test, I think, yeah, test context. And then this one I'm going to use this create context to make it a context. So create context like that. So I've done what I've created my context here. Sorry, I've created the context here. Then on this application, I'm going to import it. Import, 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 import test. Test context, but then now this time it is in the context folder. So now where I want to use it, so I can now steal this variable here for this object user, and then this key value pairs. But then now on this parent element here, I'm going to wrap everything within the provider. So if you want to use it, you can write you can write test context. Like you'll need to provide everything now within there. So I'm going to do it this way. And then you want to make sure that you're going to wrap your entire um, parent component with this test context. Like every component that will want to use this test component, like you can just define them on this parent one. So here, and then of course you'll need to use also some built-in provider. So from this text context, of which is now this one, it is using this text create context provider, and there's an attribute called dot provider of which it will be expecting some value. So we can provide here the value to this context. So the value that we are going to give here, it is the user that we have defined up here. So let me say user, and then of course we'll need to terminate as well with the same thing. So this dot provider like that. So I've like wrapped this parent element with the with this. So now here I will not need even to provide this prop, because it's already on the user. So now I will not need to further drill much. So for example, on this parent, let's say I wanted to use, or let's say on this parent component, on this parent component, I wanted to use it. So on the parent, I can just say, okay, it can be able to inherit without these props. So you can see here, I'm not required to even provide these props here at the top. I'm not going to provide here, but also let me go to the child. Also in the child, I'm not required to provide this one. This one, I am not required to provide this one. So you can notice when I'm in the child class, grandchild, without even providing this information here at the top, I'm able to use those values. I'm able to use the values without much providing those information. So on this grandchild, remember, even without this, remember I had no interest on the parent or in the child, but then I want to use those props on the grandchild. So here at the top where you want to use it, you'll need to import first of all the context. So I can say, for example, import use context, but then this one you'll need to import it this way within the curly brackets. And then also another thing, you'll need to import the file that has the context. So I'll say import test context from this file. So we're importing it this way, and then so we can initialize now the values. Okay, like we can be able to initialize, for example, the prop we wanted to use. Now within this grandchild, remember we had not provided in the parent or child, so we had just provided this context on the test context in this case. So where I want to use it, for example, on this before the return statement here, I can be able to create, for example, for example, user, and then I'm able to assign it to this use. Now remember, whenever you are creating here, we were using the create context to create the context, but then now where you want to use it, you'll be using the use context. You'll be now using the context, so we'll say use context, and the values you'll be using from this file called test context. In this example, I'm going to provide this test context. So now it's going to inherit from the parent from this one where I had wrapped everything within it. So here I can just say, for example, hello, and then for example now this name no, okay, I'm able to provide this entire information the way it is now without much drilling. So you can see it's bringing hello Nehemiah. So if I will try to change the values from this app, for example, let me use, for example, hello James Smith. James Smith, you can see it's going to modify directly. So you can see it's updating James Smith. So I had not provided these props to the parent, to the child, or to the grandchild. So no, okay, on the grandchild, I just imported it directly and I use it without providing like a drilling. Like at this context, they are going to help in solving the issue of the drilling. So if you have like a nested components, and then you wanted to have the very farthest component to utilize that prop, then you can do it directly with the context. So the context is going to help you achieve that. So on the last one, or maybe on the component where you want to use it, that's where you're going to provide, or maybe utilize those required props. So this one is going to solve a lot of issues, or especially on the drilling. So you don't need to provide these props all the way to the ground. You can just go straight to the grandchildren, and then you're going to use it. But then still remember, you can only have one parent component, but then under it you can have now the nested. That's why on this app you had to have this app, and then now it's having now this parent, and of course the rest will need to be nested under the parent. That's why you had to wrap everything now within the parent, and then now the parent, it will be having now the child, then now the child will be having now the grandchild. But then in terms of the props, you notice that I had just defined it here once. I had wrapped everything within now this main application. Now wherever you want to use within now your nested components, it is not depending on either of the previous, or maybe their parent component. So you can just use them directly. Although even if you'll be using it directly, since React does not allow you to use separate components or elements, you will need to provide like at the nested component. So like at this parent, it will be having the child, then the child will be having the grandchild, and then now the grandchild, that's where you are trying to use it, because React by default does not allow you to have the different components. Like you need to have the parent, and then other things will be using that parent, will be under the parent, will be nested under the parent. So that's the hierarchy. Although now for the props, you notice that I used it directly on the grandchildren without like drilling from the parent to the child or to the grandchild. Yeah, so this the solution that the context tries to help. And this one you might use it most of the time, especially if you have especially for on the state management, mostly on this main state management. Let's say it is an e-commerce system, or any system that requires authentication. So you can have all the authentications on the main context. You can call it even a user context, where it's going to have everything, including the login, logout, the user details, or all those information within one parent element. So parent components, and then where you want to use it, you just need to directly pass those information to it without the much drilling. So that's the solution that the use context is trying to solve. But then before you use the use context, you'll need to do what? You'll need to create first of all that context using this create context. Using the create context. So guys, because of time, I'm not going to explain all the hooks in React. But then for me, I always tell my students to just know the roadmap to any framework or any programming language. And then other things they will be learning as they work on something. So you just want to learn the core technologies or maybe the framework or maybe the core stuff that I will be using mostly, and then other things you'll be able to understand as you work on something. Because for me, I always believe like our brain tends to remember what is really relevant. Like sometimes you might learn many things, but then since most of them you'll not be using, so our brain tends to forget those that will not be using. Then it will remember what is just relevant. So assume that you've learned many things that you will not be using, and then now the brain forgets everything, so it will be irrelevant. That's why I always tell my learners to just know the roadmap of something, and then some of the key things that they will be using mostly. Once they have understood that, now when they will be working on some projects or other things, they will be able to identify or maybe learn new things. And when they learn those new things, they will be able to, the brain will be able to absorb for a long-term memory in your brain. However, I'm going to just give you a summary of the hooks that you'll be using most of the time. We began with the use state, and I say that the use state, this one adds a state to a functional component and returns the current state's value and a function to update it. So when the state updates, the component will re-render. I also demonstrated the use effect. So this one is used mostly to perform side effects like data fetching from the server from the backend, or to handle subscriptions, timers, DOM manipulation and stuff. So this one runs after a render. After the render, you can be able to run this use effect. So a cleanup with can also clean up with a return function, and also it can control when it runs with the dependencies. So you can as well control when it runs with the dependency array. I didn't demonstrate that one earlier, but I believe if you are on this channel, I'll be able to create the full stack project where we'll be fetching the backend data, and I'll be able to demonstrate that one in details. And then also we have the context that we've just finished. So basically the context like access context values without probe drilling. We demonstrated that one earlier. So you're able to share that across component tree without passing probes through every level, and we saw how important that one is. Now apart from this one, we also have other hooks like at the use reducer. You might want to exploit it. Is on the I demonstrated on our LMS. It is on the LMS on that React course on our LMS, the NameTech. I demonstrated that one on it as well. So basically the use reducer is an alternative to the use state, but then for complex state logic. So it works similar to the Redux. There's another library called the Redux dispatch action to reduce a function that returns a new state. So it's good when state has multiple, sub values for complex update logic. And then we also have another one called the useRef. So the useRef hook, it is used mostly to create the mutable reference that persists, across, renders without causing re-renders. Like at the use state, we said it does the re-renders, but then at the useRef, it's going to create a mutable reference that persists across the renders without causing the re-render. It is used mostly for accessing the DOM elements directly, or storing values that don't need to trigger updates, And then we also have another one called the use memo. The use memo, it is used to memoize or cache, or maybe to put something in the memory. The use memo, it is used mostly to cache expensive calculation only to recalculate when the dependencies change. So it's going to improve the performance by avoiding unnecessary, computations. Because remember, every execution on your front end is going to utilize some memory. So if you do not want like a lot of memory to be used, then this use memo is going to help us on that to store cache, some of the data. And then now the use callback is also another one. You can use it to memorize a function. So they are not recreated every on every render. So this one can be useful when passing callbacks to optimize, child components. So this one, remember, when you do many callbacks or when you do many calls to the backend, is also going to utilize a lot of memories, and the performance is going to reduce. So the use callback is going to help us on that. Now there are other hooks that we might want to also explore, but let me just leave it there. But I'm going to try to demonstrate a simple application where you're going to use some of these hooks and also some additional libraries that you can be able to integrate to make sure that your application is going to run. So I'm going to just demonstrate how you can create a very simple application here, a React simple application, and that are going to utilize some of the stuff that we have demonstrated. So let me, on these components, I'm going to delete some of this stuff because I want to do some practical so that you can see how, in a real world, how these hooks or maybe how these components work. So I've just maintained this components folder. It doesn't have anything. And then now this main, okay, on this app, maybe I can try to just clear everything there. There's not much there. I can just leave this React there. Like there's literally nothing here. Just maintain this one because there's not much there. So I want to demonstrate how you can be able to create a simple application, and we are going to use some libraries. We are going to use some libraries that are going to help us, especially on navigation, the routing, and all that. We're going to use some external library. We are going to install, first of all, let me begin with that. On this React, I'm going to install a dependency here called React Router DOM that we are going to use for some of the stuff here on a real world application. Remember, I said that a library is like a solution that has already been implemented for you. You are just using it, and if you have such a thing, then it's going to speed up your productivity because you already have the solution. It's just to use them. So here I'm going to install it using the command, or maybe a node package manager called the npm, and then I'm going to install React router then DOM. So it is React hyphen router hyphen DOM. So npm install React router DOM. So I'm going to install this one because we are going to use some of the functions within that package. Now, as it installs, we are going to have some context that will be shared across different components. So within these components, I can create now a simple one for theme, so that we're able to toggle between the light and the dark theme. So within this context, I'm going to create another context. I can call it, for example, theme context, and we explained the context earlier, the use context earlier. So let me just call it .js. On this one, I'm going to use, first of all, I'm going to remember, when you're trying to create a context, you'll need to do what? You'll need to use a create context function. So let me say import React. But then also, apart from React, we are going to import these other functions like create context function, and then we can as well use state. I say that the context, the context allows you to also use the states within it. Like you can have other elements under it. So I'm going to use the use state as well. Use state on this context, theme context, and then I can be able to initialize my theme context here. I may be able to create some variable for it. So I'm going to say export. Export, and then I can use a const, and then theme context, theme context, theme context, and then on this theme context, I'm going to use the create. I'm going to assign to the I'm going to use this create context to assign some values to this theme context, this a variable that is going to store this entire create context, so that you can be able to use the context later, like that. So at the moment we are creating this context to this theme context variable there. So once you have it, then also another thing, you need to have a provider that we are going to use for this theme context. So let me also export it. So let me export, but then now remember, you can be able to even export later. You can be able to export it later. But remember, there's that approach that we're using to use this default export, but then you can as well export when you're trying to define a function. So here I can say, for example, export and then function, and then I can call it theme. This function I can call it theme provider. It is the one that is going to provide now the theme context. So I'm going to call it theme provider, and then within it, I'm going to provide here a prop called children that will be shared across components that I will require to use this theme. So I'm going to pass here a prop called children there, and then the program that I'm going to write here, I'm going to use this state, useState. I'm going to use the useState here to define some of the states that are going to be used here. So const the before them, I'm going to call it them, and then the theme after the toggle, or maybe after an update, I'm going to say set them, and then I'm going to use that use state, use state that we imported there earlier, use state. But then this one I'm going to initialize it with the light theme, like the default one, but then we're able to toggle to the dark. So let me call it a light, and let me call it light. So this is the initial state. So let me now create some kind of a function for toggle. So basically the arrow function allows you to create a variable, and that variable you make it a function. So it's like trying to create a variable, and at the same time it's also a function with the arrow function. So I'm going to, you can go to ThemeContext.com and go to JavaScript and learn more about the arrow functions on the functions topic. So let me create here a const to a variable. I can call it toggle theme. Toggle theme. Let me use the camel case toggle theme, like that. So this is a variable, but then at the same time I'm going to make it a function by the help of the arrow function. I'm not going to pass any prop there or argument. And then here I am going to provide now the new value for the theme. The initial one is, we said it is light, so we need to have a function that's going to update it. So the function I'm going to say set theme, which is going to update the previous theme. So I'm going to say prev, the previous one is going to update this previous one, which will be the previous one. First of all, the previous one, it was the light theme, the one that is going to be updated. Now for equal operator in JavaScript, we're going to use 3. Remember, in other languages like Python, it is 2. So here, the default one here, it is what? It is light. It is light, but then you can toggle to dark. So you're able to toggle to dark. So let me write here some variable for dark to check, and then so the previous could either by day it could be either light or dark, because sometimes, let's say you have already switched to dark, but then later maybe you wanted to update to light, so you're able to switch that, you're able to toggle. So the previous could either be light or dark, but then you're able to switch to whatever you wanted. So for example, here we can be able to use now light. So on the toggle, you're able to toggle between light and the dark one. So it is optional to toggle between light or dark, but then the defaulted one is the light mode, like that. So so I've defined my toggle theme here, and then on the return statement now, where I want to use that, I need to provide now some the provider that are going to use it. So here I can, on the return statement here, I can say return, and then on this return, I'm going to use what? I'm going to wrap the children under the theme provider. So I'm going to say the ThemeContext. ThemeContext dot provider. We say that if you want to use those, you need to use this provider. So the value here is going to be is going to be what? Now you need to use now these two parentheses there. So to destructure the props, so theme, and then I'm going to use this toggle theme to navigate between the light and the dark. And then here I'm going to, first of all, I need to close this element, so like that. And then now within it, I'm going to have the children. So the children are going to use this prop. So I'm going to use this prop, like that. So let me provide it this way. So this is a very simple context that we are going to use across different applications to toggle either between a light or dark mode. So now once you have it, we can as well create another component for navigations. The navigation, so that you can be able either to let me go to the components. I can call it navigation. Navigation. Now remember, it is in the components folder. Let me call it navigation. And navigation.js. So within it, since we have installed this the React router, so here first of all, let me import now the context, because I want to use this context here on the navigation. So here I'm going to say, let me import React. I import React. Import React, and then also we are going to require the use context to use it. Use context to use the context that we have created there. But then now from React, and then you can terminate with the semicolon, like that. And then once you have it, then also we can have we can import now the link. Actually, there's a library for link for navigation, navigate from one point to another. Basically, we usually have the anchor tag. The anchor tag will expect you to provide a full path for if you wanted to navigate from one page to another. You need to provide there the relative path. But then now the link is going to allow you to just navigate without specifying the value there on the href. So this link attribute is still for navigation, similar to the anchor tag, only that this one is much more similar and cleaner, so that you can be able to navigate quite easily. So I'm going to import a link element. So okay, I need to write here. Say link from the React router DOM. So let me say from React. Let me from React router DOM. This one from this React router DOM, and then also we need to have this ThemeContext. We need to import it as well. So I'm going to say import ThemeContext. Okay, let me write it in. Let me say ThemeContext. This ThemeContext that we exported earlier, ThemeContext, we're going to import it here, and then we need to specify where it belongs. So it belongs from this from the context, and then from the context we have that ThemeContext file. So once we have imported everything, then we can be able to define our function. So let me say function, and then the function I'm going to use similar to the name of the file. So navigation, and then because we're using the context, so we don't need to provide the props there. And then here I'm able now to use the I'm able to use the context that we have imported here at the top. So let me create context, and then here I'm going to dynamically use the theme as the props that we defined earlier. Here the theme and the toggle was it toggle theme toggle theme sorry, toggle theme, the toggle theme, I think it's right, toggle theme. And then I'm going to assign all of them to this use context, use context, but then it's going to use what the theme context, like the value that we are going to pass in within this use context is now these are theme context. So this theme and the toggle theme, they are going to have the same values there. They are going to have the initial values there, but then you'll be able to update the toggle theme. So theme will be like at the initial. I will hold the initial, then now the toggle is the one that you're able to navigate later. So I'm going to do it that way. And then now on the return statement, let me say return. On this return, I am going to wrap everything under the parent element. I can use any, like for example nav or a div then under it you can have some navigation, but then before that I can have some other attributes, HTML attributes like HTML attributes like styling. Let me have the style, which is just a CSS styling. I say that you need to have some knowledge on the CSS. So here on the style, I will need to provide these values there in the inside, like for example padding, padding, like these are the spaces that surrounds an element, around an element. So maybe on this one I can have 20. Now remember on React you don't use it directly like how you are trying to do it on HTML. So this one you need to write it in to parentheses if you wanted to use those attributes there. So padding, we are going to give it but there's a easier way to style using the tailwind CSS, but then Let me just make it much simple for this case. So padding, I'm giving it something like a 20 pixel, no 20, yeah, 20 pixel, and then normally in CSS you could have separated with a semicolon, but then on React you're going to separate with a comma because these are like now the object. These are like a dictionary in other languages. So you're giving key value pair under this style attribute. Then, for example, if you wanted to give some background color, background color, background color. So the background color is the key. You can give it some value, but then this one will be very dynamic. We are going to use this theme, and then we are going to use the light theme. So if it's light theme, now remember for equal you need to use 3. So if it is light theme, then the background, because I want to make it more dynamic, if it is light, then we can use a brighter color there. So if it's light, then it's going to use a lighter theme. Let me use a hexadecimal value here, or any other name, for example F0, F0, F0. So this is an hexadecimal, more of a brighter color or a grayish. Otherwise, if it is dark, then you will be using the dark background. For example, more of a dark gray. I can use something like I can use this kind of a color, more darkish, more dark color there. And then so this is on the toggle theme. So by default it is going to use, so if it's light it's going to use this color. If not, then it's going to use this dark color, because we want to make it more dynamic on this background color. And also another color, now the text color that we are going to use there. So I think let me try to use it in a new line. In fact, let me try to split it this way so it can be much cleaner. Yeah, also. And then here I can have maybe color, and then the key. Then now the value I'm going to give it a theme. I'm going to use the theme, and then now the theme, for example, if we're using the light theme, theme, then the color, actually usually use this question mark as a condition. So it's trying to check if it is light theme, then this is going to apply. If not, something else will apply. So mostly usually use this a question mark for something that is quite optional. So it's more of a condition, like if this one is there, do this. If not, something else will happen. So on this one, for example, if it is the theme, it is light, so mostly for it to blend with the background, then the text should be dark. So here I'm going to use a dark color, of which should be black. You can use black or a 00 for hexadecimal for it. Otherwise, if not, then we are going to use the light, and then the light, it will be FFF. So this one will blend with this dark. Then now this white is going to blend with the contrast is going to be good if the far color is dark. It will blend with the background. If the background is dark, then the far will be white, so that the contrast will apply well on this navigation. Now on the navigation itself, we'll need to provide the links for the navigations. So here I'm going to use the link attribute. I'm going to use the link, and then assuming this is a blogger system, we can first of all have, let me have home. But then within this link, you can also pass other properties, other attributes. Like first of all, the link will require this attribute called to. So like this link should direct you where. So on these two, you can write what? You can write the path that are going to redirect you. So this one is going to be like for the home. So I'm going to write that / for home. Remember, we're going to define the routes later on the app, but this one is going to navigate you to the home. Home is like that landing page. When you just type a domain, then it's going to take you there. That is like the home, the root. So I'm going to use that one. Then now the styling, the style, and the style that I'm going to use there, it is I'm going to provide some margins on it. So if you wanted to use those styling within the HTML element, you need to write it this way. First of all, the outside curly bracket, then the inside. Then now the way you usually provide those styling on the HTML is going to be a little bit different, because this one is more on the key value pair. So I'm going to say margin. Then for the margin, I can give it some the margin, maybe the top margin, top and bottom, we can give it 0, but then the left and right, we can give it something like 10 pixels. If it will not work well, we shall just adjust. And then the color, so color, the color, we can use some color here. Let me try to use some hexadecimal. So the color, I can use whatever color. Let me try this color. Let me try this kind of a color, more of some bluish, something like that, but not that blue. And then also because this is a link, we can be able to remove the text decoration. Like I don't like that underline, like someone will just know that you haven't styled it. So I'm going to use text decoration attribute here, but property, I'm going to give it none. I'm going to give it none, and I'm going to duplicate this link to others. So I'm going to have this one. The other one, I'm just going to call it, for example, post. Let's assume that's a blogger. Let me call it posts. And then this other one, and then I will need to provide also. Let me try to minimize this one, so I can call it post. Like this is the navigation that is there at the top, where you can be able to click, and then it's going to take you to different pages or component. This time, because we're using React, is a single page application. So let me call it posts. And then we can also have another one for about. Let's say you have an about, more information about that site, about. Then this one, I'm going to call it, for example, about us. And then we can also have something like a for contact, though we shall not implement the contact to receive forms, because this is just front end contact. And then I'm going to call it contact. And yeah, so contact like that. And then also the buttons, I'm going to define here a button. So button on this button is going to display them dynamically. These elements that are here, they are going to be displayed dynamically. So what I'm going to do here, when you click on a button, there should be some event. Now first of all, when you click on the button, like for example, you should be able to toggle between whatever theme, for example, light or dark theme. So we shall have a button on that navigation. Maybe let me first of all begin with this. Let me add in a click event. On click event, on click event, we are going to toggle theme. We're going to use the toggle theme, and remember, on the toggle theme, we had already implement what should be happening on the toggle earlier on the context on the toggle theme. It's going to switch from one to another. For example, if it was light, it's going to switch to black. Dark, if it was dark, it's going to switch to light. We had implemented that logic. This other side, and so here I'm just going to pass that function here, and then I can have also some style under this button. I can have some style. So style. So on the style, if you wanted to use some CSS on this React, you will need to write into curly brackets, and now in the inside you'll be passing key value pair. So margin is a key, then the value you'll be providing some values that you wanted to give it. So for example, let me use something like margin left to be very specific. Let's say margin left. So the space at the left before these other buttons, that margin I can have something like a 20 pixel. So the space just after the links before the toggle button, maybe 20 pixel. Then now padding, comma, padding. So for the padding, I can give it, for example, 5 pixel at the top and bottom, and then 10 pixel maybe left and right. And then here I'll be able now to display those information, or maybe the text, the label. But then these labels will be dynamically, so that, for example, once it is in dark, when you toggle, it's going to display light. So like those labels should be dynamically, and you're able to achieve that with the help of variables. So I'm going to write this curly bracket to allow me to use the variable within my label, within my text, because a button should expect a label to be a text. So theme here is going to be very dynamic. So for example, if the theme is light, then it's going to display dark mode, like a click to switch to dark mode. So this one should be dynamically, that's why we need to have that question mark. For example, you can say dark mode is going to display dark mode. Otherwise it's going to display light. For example, if the theme was dark, then it's going to display light mode. So that way you can just write there a light mode. Okay, let me try to explain what is happening here. So for example, when you write this statement here, for example, if theme, this is like a conditional statement. So for example, if theme it is light, display dark mode. If not, like that part of the else, we are going to display the light mode. So we are trying to display these labels dynamically. So if the theme equals to light, then it's going to display the label for the dark mode, so that when you click on it, it's going to toggle to the dark. And then if the theme is not light, is dark, then it's going to display the text light mode, so that when you click on it, it's going to toggle to the dark mode. And then at this navigation, we can be able to export this entire navigation function. We can be able to export so that we can be able to use it somewhere else. So I'm going to say export default navigation, like that. So this is navigation. We are done. Remember, if we need to change anything, we'll come back here and then be able to change. And then remember, we have within this React, we have some libraries for the theme, but then I just want to show you how to do it like manually, because I want you to understand this concept, the usage of the context and the hooks, the sets, and all that. So now I'm going to create another folder within these assets, within this SRC, not assets actually, SRC. I'm going to create another one to have pages. Let me call it pages. And then within the pages, I'm going to have the home page. Let me call it home dot home.js. Now within the home components, I can have some content there. Maybe if I can have, let me try to copy some few things here. I'm not going to use everything there, by the way, but then let me just have it here. So first of all here, I'm going to require the use context, of course, but then also apart from the use context, I'm going to require the use state, and I know the usage of the use state. And then also I'm going to require use effect so that you can be able to display it dynamically. Use effect because I just want to make you guys use the skills that you have acquired. That's why I'm going to use that use state and the use effect. And of course, at this time actually we are not going to use this link because the link we have already defined them on the navigation. So I just need to have this theme context from the theme context in the context folder. And then now the component here, I'm going to call it home. Let me call it home. So I've defined it here, and then I've exported here. And then now here on the return, I can use the div instead of the nav. Let me try to use div. By the way, I'm selecting multiple elements at the same time by the help of this. Okay, like a VS Code is very powerful. Like once you've selected something, you can click on Control plus D to select multiple of the same thing if they are there. And then when you have selected several things, you're able to change anything, and then it's going to target everything, and then it's going to modify. So the same, I just want to use let me call it div, because this is not a navigation, so let me call it a div. Now the padding, now before that, let me try to first of all for the theme, this time I'll not toggle because I'll just need to use the theme so that, for example, if the background is white, I'll know the color to use because we're trying to display it dynamically. So I just require this theme, which is inheriting or using the theme context. And also I will need to have something like a counter. I can have something like a counter, so I can use the use state, so I can have count, and then set count, and the set count I'm going to initialize it with 0, so use state, I'm going to initialize it with 0 there, and then I can close terminate with a semicolon like that, because that is more of a block. And then now, since we demonstrated earlier that you can as well use the hook, you can as well use the use effect to also update something outside the components. Like for example, from the HTML we have the header. Remember, no, we have the title. Remember, within this HTML we have these titles, and it has also other meta information. So we say that the use effect can as well affect something outside your component. And what is that thing outside? Like this title, I can have this meta information and all that. So we want to affect this title so that when you are in the home, it's going to display home instead of a React application, because this is a single application that's going to be utilized. Like everything is going to use it here, and then it's going to just display it dynamically. So for example, if you wanted to also change the title when you switch from one component to another, we can use the use effect for that. So we can be able to modify here, let's say use effect, and then on this use effect I'm going to it's a function, of course. Then I'm going to use an arrow function mostly, an arrow function here, and then I'm going to do what I'm going to target this object, which is like the entire object, entire HTML. It says that whenever you're trying to create to run a HTML document, the browser engine is going to convert that HTML into a model called the DOM, of which once you have the DOM, the object that is going to be created there is called the document from that DOM model. So the document, once you specify the document object, you're able to manipulate the attributes or properties of the HTML. So here I want to modify, for example, this title. Title. The title here it is what? The title here it is React application. But now I want to give it a new value. Maybe I can call it, for example, home. I can give it some new value, like for example, home. Maybe React blog. By there, let me try to make it a blogger. Let me just call it, for example, a React blog, something like that. So this one on the home, this useEffect is going to update it to be called the React blog. And then on the return statement is going to also display it dynamically depending on the theme. So the background color, if it is light theme, we can use so the background color, if the theme is light, the background color, of course, it should be white, right? If the let's use white. Otherwise, we are going to use the dark, the black, but also not that deep dark. Maybe we can call it, for example, 2. I'm not going to explain these hexadecimal values from the 0 all the way to F, because that's a topic on the CSS, and I say that for you to learn React, at least you will need to have learned some basics of the CSS. So you already know these attributes there. And then for the color, if the background is white, then the color, of course, it must be dark, like those text should be dark. And then now if it is not light, which means it's dark, then the text should be now white, like that. And then of course we can also have some viewport height, another attribute there. No, not the viewport height, actually. Let me use the mean height. Mean height, I can give it, for example, the 80% viewport height. I'm going to give it 80. So here now, instead of these links here, because we are not using the links at the moment, so let me try to do away with this stuff. And then I'm going to have, for example, heading. Remember, we're going to just make this one a very simple one. Let me have H1 with a fewer styling. By the way, let me just call it home. In fact, maybe we could try to use Tailwind. I'll show you how to integrate the Tailwind as well for much faster styling. Let me say, for example, homepage. And then I can have, for example, some text there. For example, some paragraph tag. Let me say welcome to the symbol blog app, a blog application. And then we can have some div for styling to show the number of articles that are there, perhaps. So I can have a div, and then within this div I can have some styling. But then now remember, styling, the HTML styling on React, you will need to write them in curly brackets like that, and then 2 curly brackets to make it an object, because if you have more than one element. So we can have the margin top, so that it can be there will be some space after this welcome message. So for example, I can say margin top, the key, the value, I can give it something like a 20 pixel. If it will be too big, we shall change. Too small, we shall also change. And then I think that should be it. And then now under this div, we can have a button, number H3. No, not a button, but then just a message there. For example, counter the number of articles there. We can now use the state skills that we learned earlier to implement a counter, so that when you click on it, then it's going to update the count. So let me say here count, was it count? Yeah, count. And then so it's going to display like the number of counter there. Then we can be able to have a button to display, for example, the increment. So let me have a button. Okay, this is not, let me see. So this button I can say, for example, increment. Increment, and then I can have an event here. I can have an event, and I'm going to use an on-click event. On-click. On this on-click event, I'm going to update the set count. I'm going to update the set count, and then with the help of the arrow function, and then I'm going to update the set count. So the set count, when you are doing the increment, the initial was 0. Remember, we initialized here with a 0. But then now when you're trying to increment by clicking the button, then the count, we can be able to increment by 1, by the way. We can be able to increment by 1 there. So that's the button for increment. And then we can also have a button for resetting. Once you have incremented, you can be able to reset. So how do you reset? We can be able to so this count, set count, now instead of incrementing with the count, so here we shall give it 0, so that it will go back to 0 like that. And then let's try it, and then maybe I can call the button reset. And call it reset. Reset, and then maybe I can try to add in some styling on this button. So with the help of the style attribute, so I can have style, and then on this style I'm going to have padding, top and bottom. I can give it 5 pixel, and then left and right maybe 15 pixel, something like that. 15 pixel. If it will be too big, we shall modify later. And then also the margin right, so that we can be able to access the reset button properly. So the margin, not margin right, margin right, maybe I can give it 10 pixels, so that the reset button will be like there will be some distinction there. So here maybe what I will do is just to provide these on this reset, because it's at the end. It is at the end. So here what I just need to do is to just close this one like that. Now top them like that. Then now this is the button for the reset, and then we are good. By there you can terminate the statements with the semi colon like that. Now let me check the return. So this return statement is quite clear, but then this function we have opened it here. We'll need to at least close. Let me find where it's up. Oh yeah, it's here already. We have closed it here. That's fine. So this is home, just a very simple one. And then we can also have another one for post, to display the posts. Remember, the essence here is to make sure that you guys are trying to use the skills you have acquired, especially the hooks skills. So I'll go to the pages, and then I'm going to create another page called, for example, post. Let me create post. Remember, sorry. Remember, this is just the basic, the demo one, but real post you'll need to have it somewhere. Then we'll be fetching. But then let me just call it post.js or a JS or a JS6, they all mean the same because we'll be writing the HTML in the inside that will be converted to JavaScript objects. So I'll just copy the home content, then I'm going to paste it on the post, and the first thing that I'm going to do is to change the function from home to posts, and then I'm going to also export it this way, posts like that. And then of course I'm going to use these attributes there at the top, and then also the ThemeContext cell we're going to use the same thing. Theme as well, we are going to use this one only. We are not toggling. Toggle is on the navigation because it will be there, it will be persistent there at the top, so we don't need to modify on every file or implement it on the same on all the files. But then I can have a state, the use state, but then also the use state can also take other data types apart from the numbers and strings. It can also have a list. So we are having the list or arrays, but then now the elements here we can provide them in form of an object. An object is like a dictionary in other object or in other programming languages like Python. An object in Python is more of a dictionary. Okay, like in JavaScript is more of a dictionary, but then in other languages like Python we are calling them dictionary. So I'm going to provide the key value pair. So the ID is a number, so I can say for example 1, and then the title of the article, can use the title, then the title I can give it, for example, let me call it get started. Okay, get started with React, get started React, and then maybe you can try to demonstrate some likes some likes there. So likes I can say for example 5 likes. It has 5 likes here, that. Then now elements in a list or an array, you need to separate them with a comma. So let me try to add at least 3. So this can be 2, and then maybe understanding React hook, say understanding React hooks. Maybe this one we can say it has how many likes, maybe because our hooks are much more interesting. Let's call it even 20, give it 20 likes. And then ID number 3, the title we are going to say, for example, building your first app, building your first application. And then maybe likes we can try to give it something like a 4 or something like that. Yeah. So and then now on the use effect here we are going to also change here to maybe post instead of okay. Oh yeah, it's changed. I don't know how it did this, but it seems okay. It seems when I was changing this one, I clicked on Control D and then it selected this one. I thought it was selecting this end one, but then it has already changed. So this is post, and then React blog application. But then on this one we will by the way, on this use effect, the array on it, we shall give it an empty. On the home, on this use effect, we can be able to initialize here with an empty one, with an empty object like that. I had forgotten. There's not much effect, but they just to initialize your array. You can do it that way. But then here also we can as well do that, comma, then you give it like dependencies is going to be nothing. There's no array dependencies there, so we're giving it's the same as leaving it empty. But then the best approach is doing this way. So on the return statement, padding we're going to still maintain 20, but then on the background color, I think we shall still maintain that one, and then also the viewport height we shall still maintain that one. Should we maintain it that way? Yeah, by the way we can maintain that way, but then also let's try to update this one for updating them. Uh, for updating the number of likes, so that maybe for example once you click, maybe it can try to increment or something like that. Let's try to have a logic for a function for updating the likes on the post. So with that one we can be able to use this we're able to use the let me create a function, but then another function, because I'm trying to create a variable for it, then I make it a function. So let me call it handle likes, maybe like, and then on this one I will be targeting the ID as my prop here, or maybe an argument. Sorry, this is just a normal function. This is an ID, and then within it, because there is an arrow function. Like an arrow function, remember the main purpose of an arrow function allows you to make a function more of a variable. Like you're creating a variable, but then at the same time that variable is a function. So I'm going to provide these statements in the inside, or these are the programs. The first program here is going to update the set posts, set oh, by the way, let me try to, I forgot, I just copied, but then I forgot to change. So it should be a posts. Posts. So posts, sorry, posts, and then maybe I can say set post should be, you should be following. For the states, you need to follow, especially the second parameter, it should follow, camel case convention. So on this handle like, it will be updating this set post, but then I will be targeting the likes only. So set posts, the set post will be targeting that object or that dictionary. So posts, the post, and then will be, because it is what? It is a dictionary. Okay, it is an array. This post, it is an array. We'll need to iterate over it with the help of the map. Map is for iteration over the iterable objects, like these objects, dictionaries. So map is for iteration, and then I will need to specify what you're trying to iterate. So we're going to say post for individual posts that I will be iterating over it. So post is going to be the individual post. We can use an arrow function by the way. Okay, like we can be able to assign it this way. So the post is going to be the post dot ID. We are tracking the post by their ID. Then once you have that ID, that post ID, we are going to equate it with the, now I think what I'll do, let me try to make it in a new line so that it can be much more readable. So this post, now within there, this arrow function on this are set post. So we're iterating over the posts we have here, of which it is an array of objects, and then we are tracing individual post by its ID. So posts, individual post, we are going to use this post ID to track individual post, and then on it we are going to equate it with the ID, otherwise we are going to check the post number by the help of this one, and then you can specify the post to track those posts. And then now likes, you can be able to increment the likes. So likes here, we're able to increment. For example, if you'll be clicking our button, for example the like button, then it should be incrementing. So I can say, for example, post, because it's an object, post, then I will need to specify the key, maybe likes, then it will be incrementing with the one when you click that like button, or maybe just a button for like, it will be incrementing with that one. So for the post, this one is you are tracking out the post this way, and then this like is what we are trying to update it this way. So this one is going to help us track an individual ID where the current post is, and then with that ID you're able to increment it when you click on the button. When you click on the button, you'll be able to increment. So remember, this is conditionally if it is the current ID. So if it's not, then the else should be here. The else should be here. We shall just display the post. Remember, whenever you're using the conditional statement, it will need to have the else, otherwise it will complain. So once you have it, then you're able to terminate that statement like this. So now where I want to use it, remember these ones I'm going to just maintain the way they are because are the same logic. But then here I'm going to say, for example, blog, maybe posts, blog posts. And then these titles are going to be displayed dynamically. So how do you display the articles dynamically? Now, since there are many, we can iterate over them and display them, dynamically as well with the help of the map, which is help us to iterate over the object. So here I'm going to just kind of clear stuff here for simplicity. So I can have that div to, because React expects you to only have one parent element, and then so there's the blog. But then now for individual posts, I'm going to iterate over them. And how are you able to iterate over an iterable object within a text? Remember, HTML expects mostly the text content. So if you wanted to provide the content in the inside, which are more variables, then you can use the curly brackets, allows you to pass variables within now your HTML. So here maybe I can call it, for example, posts for the object that we are trying to iterate over them, which is this one, posts, and then dot map to iterate over them, dot map. And what is the map used for? For iterating our iterable object, or maybe iterating an array. So this one is going to help us do it. Is going to help us like to iterate over that iterable object, of which is now our object here. And then so when you are iterating individual object, we are going to give it a variable for individual object, individual now element on that object. We are going to target it with the post dot id, with the post individual post dot id, id like we'll be targeting the id for individual post there. So on this map it is post. Now sorry, not this one actually. So you will need to specify, because this one when say .id, it will mean that you already had defined this post. But then this is now a new variable that we are trying to create to stand for individual posts. We'll need to specify what that post should represent. So I'll say post, and then this should be representing should be representing this in here. It should be representing um, it should be representing this should be representing individual posts of which we're able to access them by okay, but then let me make them in a div, so that a div is like an inline what it's more of okay, a div is more of a block level element, so it's going to start in a new line. So let me have div to wrap everything there like that, div, and then now within this div, now to track individual posts here that we are trying to iterate over, and then individual is going to represent an individual instance under the posts object. So here we're able to track individual one by the key. You need to specify the key, and then now the key you will be using now the post within the post individual element. It is having the IDs. So I'm going to say post dot ID to track individual element, which is the IDs are very unique. And then once you've done that, then you can also have some styling as well on this stuff. So let's say style. The style here, if you wanted to have the stylings, you need to use it in object format. Then margin, you can give it some top and bottom, maybe 20 pixel to separate individual article from the other. So let's say 20 pixel top and bottom, but then left and right you can just maintain 0. Also we can have some padding in the inside, so let me have padding, of which you'll be separating this ones with the comma, and then here I'm going to say padding. So for the padding, I can just use 15 pixel perhaps. Let's have 15 pixel, and then also it can have some border, at least just to make it more nice. Let's have border. We can give a value of 1 pixel, perhaps solid, and then gray, and then also it can have some border radius so that it will not be that sharp. So border radius maybe 5 pixel or so. Yeah, 5 pixels. So this is for that entire container, for that blog card, like that entire blog. It will be these are the stylings for it. But then now the individual element within now the blog, like the title, you can be able to specify them dynamically within this div as well. Within this div, individual one, you can have, for example, a h3 to represent the title. So here I will say post dot title. From this individual post, the title there will be able to display the title. And then now for the likes, I can use a paragraph tag. So paragraph tag, and of which this one I'm going to just write there the button, for example, likes. Then so these likes I'm going to also display them dynamically, but then we also made sure we also need to update such that when you click it's going to also increment the number of likes. So let me say post dot like post dot likes, like from individual key you're able to get now the values there. So likes, but then now these likes we want to make it more incremental, like a more dynamic. So we can use a button that will allow us to add in the click event. So on this button we can have this on click event. On this on click event, we're able to make it remember we say that whenever you have what do you call it, an arrow function allows you to make a variable more of a function. So this on click is more of a variable. We are trying to assign a value to it, but then now the value, it is a function. So if you wanted to make it a function, then you can use the arrow function of which you are passing empty arguments in the inside, but then now the statements or programs, we're going to use this arrow function to render that function handle. It was for handling the like, which is now a function, but then now we'll be incrementing. So remember the handle like, we have the logics for incrementing already. We have the logic for incrementing the number of likes. So here we just need to provide this post.id so that it can increment its like for individual posts, not all the posts. So like that. Then now maybe we can have some styles to it. We have style. So the style, you need to pass in form of an object. So padding is like the key. Then now the value, I can say maybe top and bottom like 5 pixel, and then left and right maybe 15 pixel. These are paddings. In case, for example, it's not good, we shall modify later. And then maybe I can say like, just a simple one. Let me call it a like. Let me just call it a like. Like that. Like. Then so I think this should be pretty much it. This is just a very simple block system. And then we can also have some about. We can also have some about, and about is I'm going to just make it a very simple one. Let me just copy this. In fact, home. Home. Then on these pages, I can create an about. There's not much logic on the about. This just to insert that about. Oh, sorry, about.js or a JSX, but you can call it JSX or a JS. There's no issue there. In fact, let me make it more JSX. Because we're using the HTMLs in the inside. Let me make it JSX. But remember, if you just maintain .js, there's no issue. It will still work. So on the about, so what I'm going to just in fact, let me just make it much more simple. Let me just make it more simple. First of all, the theme will maintain that way. But then now there's no increment here, so I'm not going to require this state because I want to make this one much more similar, because you already know the usage of the useState, so there's no need to repeat here. This is just for component purposes. So let me just make it there, and then of course the context I'll need to have there so that you can inherit those theme, especially for the body. And then here I'm going to click Control plus D to select multiple, so it's going to select home, and then also home there, and then home, the last one, and I'm going to call it about. But then what I'm going to only change here maybe is just some text here. Maybe I can say maybe let's say what we do, something like that, what we do. And then you can just have a very okay, let me try to make this on h3, and then maybe h3, and then I can have a paragraph tag, very simple one. A paragraph tag, and then it will be expecting the closing. So on this one I can have some lorem text, lorem text, and then just to make it more an about page. But then remember, this one is not more about the content. This is just to show you how to render these components very well. And then maybe if I could try to, what else can we? Oh, I'm seeing this underline because I'm having an extra closing of the div. So let me just do away with that one. So this is just a very simple one about. And then I can also have the conduct page, and there's no form here because we are not collecting any data. Maybe I can say, for example, on the conduct, I can just say, for example, conduct us. Let me try also to change here. Select and then Control D, select multiple, and then I can say conduct, and then on this conduct, I can maybe say conduct page, maybe let's say reach out, and then on this one I can say maybe conduct us on. By that is my official number. You can reach me in case you have a question. Let me say plus 2547 07 07 9679. Okay, by there, how is it? 2547 707, then 9679 28, like that. Contact contact us, or let me say, or email is info at ThemeContext.com, info at ThemeContext.com, like that. So this is it, and then yeah, so this is it, and then so these are the components that we are going to use here. Remember, this is just a very simple one. We are not going to submit anything there. So now once you have created those pages and components, so now on your main application, which is now app.js, you can just import them. So how do you import them? So first of all, let me say import home. Okay. Import. I think let me try to open it so that when I try to click on it, it's going to just open it. Let me try to just open these pages to be there, so that it's going to be much easier for me to import them by the auto completion feature in React. In JavaScript, in this VS Code. Let me try to just have it there, so that on this app I can just say, for example, import, then I can say begin type home, then when I will click, it's going to complete for me automatically. Then about, I can just say import, then when I begin to type about, then I click and it's going to autocomplete for me. And then also import post, so import posts, then when I click and it's going to autocomplete, similar to what is it about conduct here. Import conduct, then it's going to autocomplete for me. So I'm done with them. So I can even minimize them here. So another thing that we are going to require here, it is the theme provider, which we had implemented in the context. We have the theme provider. We have the theme provider here, of which is useNote. It is rendering the theme context. So here, what I will do, I will just need to import, maybe here the top level, I can have the theme. Let me try to, okay, let me just say, for example, import, let's say theme provider here, theme provider, of which is more of a function that we have exported. So if you want to import a function, you need to do it this way. It's not like a variable like that. And then also we have some built-in dependencies that we are going to require here for us to be able to render this single page application to act like a multiple pages, so that it can be able to render components well. So that is from the React router DOM. So I'm going to say import first of all the browser router, browser router. No, okay, what I will do, let me try to use the link, then I'm going to add that one. Route. Okay, there's no shortcut for that. Let me try to just type in full. I will type them in curly brackets, and then in the inside I can have the browser router. I can have the browser. Okay, browser router. Then also we shall need routes to define the path of the components, routes, and then individual route. So these are functions within the React router DOM. So I can say from React router DOM. So this one. So first of all, this browser router is going to help us like use the routing system on the specific browser. Then now the routes, this like now the function that's going to wrap all your routes. Then now the route is now for individual. For example, let's say home, about, we'll be using this route. So these are the dependencies that I'm going to require. So now on my application, on my main application function here, the bottom here, I can have on this return statement, the first thing that I'm going to wrap everything with, it is that theme provider. So let me have them theme provider, of which this theme provider already it has what? It has this provider on it. We have already defined them, so it's going to just use it, so I'll not need to say dot provider again. And then another thing that we are going to require here, it is the browser router that we have just imported, browser router. So this one is going to have everything, like everything should be within now this browser router. So under it you can also have the nested element. Of course, we're going to pass here the navigation. By then, did we import navigation? Because I will require it on all the components. So let me have navigation in the components. Then here I'm going to just import. So let me say import navigation where we had exported. So here I'm going to say navigation. So at the top level, before any component, so let me say navigation, navigation, and then yeah. So this is my navigation, and then okay, you can even use a self-closing with a navigation like that, and then you will not require this one. So this is just a standalone component for the navigation. It will be at the very top. So navigation, it is outside the routes. So now within now this navigation, you can have the routes. It's like now a component that's going to wrap all our routes within it. So I'm going to say routes. This is like the main component that's going to wrap all our routes in the inside. Let me try to push it front, that, and then now within the inside, now you can have individual route like this, and then you can make it even self-closing, but then it requires some props. So the first one, you'll need to provide the path. The path is where that route should take you to. So for the home, we're going to use this / to specify the landing, so that when you just click on it, this one is going to be like at the landing page. With that, when you just type the domain, it's going to open on this the domain or IP address is going to take you to the route, to the home of this thing. So like this is the page that is going to open. So what will be the page? You're going to define the page by the element attribute. So you say element, and then now the element, you will specify the component data will be executed or maybe will be rendered under this route. So what will be that component? We're going to use home. Let me say home, home, and then it is self-closing element like that. And then we can have for the rest as well, for posts. So we can have another one for what do we call it? We can have for posts. For posts, then here I'm going to use the post one, posts, and then also we have for about. Then this one is going to be about. About, and then also we have also the conduct. By the, let me see on the navigation on the conduct. Yeah, it's conduct. Yeah, conduct. So this one I can say conduct like that. So this way I have defined what the routes to my application, of which this application, this app element is going to be executed under the main.js. So let me now try to run them. I will need to navigate to my application so that you can be able to see it. So this front end, I can, on this front end I will need to navigate there. So cd front end, cd front end, and then npm run dev, then there's an error, there's an issue here. Let me see. So like because yeah, so we need to make it a jsx.jsx like that. Let me see if it's going to fit. Okay, it is the one that I will need to make it jsx. Okay, and then let me try to rerun it again. npm run dev. Let me see if it's going to give us. Yeah, so it has worked. So let me try to open it. Let me try to open. So the home page that is going to open there. So okay, again it's going to give us also this other error. Let me see. Which component? On the navigation, let me go to navigation. Yeah, so also navigation, let me make it to JSX. JSX. First of all, the navigation, let me see if we're getting the error. So let me try to restart again. npm run dev, then let me reload this other end and see if it's going to work, or we are going to, yeah. So it has worked now, and you're able to toggle between light and the dark mode. And this is the header, which is now persisting. When you go to about, when you go to post, you're able to see this. When you click on the light, it's going to increase the number of lights. The same way here, do that. Remember, you can also have that part of the paragraph, the content, but then you can see this navigation is persistent. It is persistent, but then you can also have the footer. Let me try to also create on this component. Let me also have footer JSX. But then you notice that you need to say JSX, and then maybe I can just have let me copy from maybe about. Let me copy from the about. from this about, but then I'm going to make it footer. Footer, I'm going to call it footer. But then this one I will not actually require this hook. I'll not require, and also I'll not even require much of this. I'll not even require, do I really require this one? Actually I'll not require this property. Oh yeah, but there I can have, but then this property I can remove it. But then maybe I can just say, because our footer is more symbol, let me just call it, for example, all rights reserved, and then for example, developed by, for example, you, maybe let me call it NameTech, my brand, NameTech Innovations Limited, my company, limited, okay, it should be limited, yeah, like that, to get some credit. And then you can have also some conduct on the footer, say tell, okay, let me write tell, and then tell, I can have my number there, 254, then 707 96 79 28, like that, and also some email there. So this is the component that we are having, and it is sensitive to the theme, of which here we are using. Actually here will not require the useEffect, here, because we are not yeah. So these are the dependencies that we are going to require. So now once I've created this footer, then I can go to my app, which is like my main application. Then on it I can be able to import it. So first of all, let me try to open it so that it will be easier for me to import. Then here I can be able to import, let me say import footer. So once I've imported the footer, so here after these routes, after my routes, I can be able to have it there at the bottom. I can have footer, and then is a self-closing, like that, so that this one is going to be applicable on all pages. So you can see we have it there, the footer, it is there, we have the header, but then also on this header we might want to do away with the margin. Let me remove the margin on this one. I can use this app.css. I can import app.css here, and then I can have, for example, these properties that were here on the index. Let me just copy this one, and then I'm going to have it on the app.css. Let me see if this one is going to work, and then here I'm going to import my css, and this one to delete this one, and see if it's going. So this one is going to be app.css, which is just in the same directory. Let me see. Wait, why is it not? Let me try to use the body property and see if it's going to have a change. Let me use body. Yeah, okay, the body has worked. Yeah, the body property, it has worked. So we have done away with them, that margin. In fact, now if it has worked, then I'll actually not to have this index.css, because I want to use another one called I'm going to use another one called the tailwind CSS. So let me try to do away with this one, and then at the reference I'm going to do away with this one also, so that we can just maintain this main CSS. Guys, I want to show you, guys, I believe it's working. You can see it's working. You've understood everything about the React and how you can use it, but additionally I just want to show you how to include some styling, the tailwind CSS. So for the Tailwind CSS, you are able to go to this page, Tailwind CSS with Vite. This Tailwind CSS Vite. So this Tailwind CSS with Vite. So just search for Tailwind CSS Vite, then click on it. Then you will need to install this Tailwind CSS like this. So let me copy this one, install this one here. Let me click on it. Then once you have done that, then let me terminate the terminal so that I may be able to install it. So just click on it to install the Tailwind CSS on this Vite. So like once you have installed, then we are going to add this Vite in the plugin configurations. On the Vite configuration there, you can add in the Vite. Let me see Vite. Vite. So on the plugin, you can have the Vite as well. No, you can have this Tailwind CSS on the plugin array. Let me have the first parameter to be this one, the Tailwind CSS, and for you to use it, you'll need to have imported there at the top. So let me just import here, import there at the top like that. And then the other thing on the main CSS, you will need to import it. You will need to import the Tailwind CSS. How do you import it? You go to your main index, then here at the top, before anything, you write there import Tailwind like that, import Tailwind CSS. And then once you have imported, then you are good to go. You can be able to use it. And I want to see if it's going to work by using this property, for example, this one. Let me see if it's going to work. Remember, this is for JavaScript, for HTML, but then for the JavaScript, you will need to have, for example, on the footer here, if you wanted to use that class, let me try to make it a paragraph tag. P tag like that. So for class is a preserved word in JavaScript. So on React, if you wanted to use the class, you need to write class name in full. The class name, not class, because a class is a reserved word in. It is a reserved word in JavaScript. So you cannot use it, because remember, once you create these HTMLs, it's going to be converted into JavaScript objects. And when you're trying to create the JavaScript objects, it's more of a variable and then its value. So you cannot use a reserved word to create what your variables. So that's why you need to use the class name. Yeah, so let's try to run it again. npm run dev, and then see if it's going to have some changes there. Like we'll see if this styling is going to be implemented on the footer, this styling that we have added. So let me try to open it. If it will not, then I will shall try another logic. Yeah, so I can see it is working. So which means that it has been configured successfully. So now we can do away with this much underline. Maybe we can just have some background color. So BG, maybe you can give it some. Wait. So this background color, we can even display it dynamically. We can be able to display the background dynamically like that. But then we can also do away with the color. Okay, the text color. Text white. Text white, and then also margin 0, Oh, okay. Actually, this is like. So let me go to the other one. Yeah, the other one for what was it? Let's go to this home, maybe home, yeah. And then let's try to add it also to those elements. So on the home, we can have the class name for increment, and then now decrement for reset. We can use something like a red or a let me use something like a red for reset. Sorry, red. And then I believe now we have something quite nice. And then maybe you can even make it much more nice. Yeah, so what I will do, let me do away with these properties. Actually, let me do away completely with these properties there. Let me do away with those properties completely, including this theme. Yes, I think I've now, yeah, so I think now it has worked. And then you're able to even make it like aligned to the sender. Let's try to make it aligned to the sender. So text sender, text sender, to make the text be at the center there. And then also by this button as well, we can also use we can make it like to be on this other end. We can make, okay, actually on this header, this toggle, we can make it to be on this other end. So how do you do that? You're able to use a flex property on the navigation. Let me go to the navigation, then I'm going to create a div here, div, and then within now this div, for the container first. All right, even without the container, maybe I can just wrap here. I'll use that. I will use this nav as my container. So here, maybe I can say, I can just say, for example, display. Then I can say, for example, flex, display flex. Wait. Okay, I forgot to have that comma. So display flex, and then justify content. Maybe I'll say yes. Space. Is it space between? Dash between. Not sure. Oh yeah. So space between. So I think now it is much more cleaner. Maybe we can even make it a button. So this one we can be able to make it a button. Let me try to just copy from the post. I'm going to copy this one. This is on the navigation, like that. And then at least now it's much more cleaner. And then I don't know. Yeah, so maybe sometimes you can also have some border here at the bottom on this entire nav. Now let's say border bottom, border bottom. We can be able to use 2 pixel property, and then maybe I can use gray. Maybe 1 pixel. Yeah, 1 pixel, like, yeah, so something like more, so that you can be able to, yeah, so I think this is just a very simple one. This is a very simple one. And also remember here you can as well try to add in also the you can also try to add in some content, some paragraph. So let me try to go to, so this is just additionals. Maybe on the post here I can try to have some paragraph. Maybe I can have also another key. Maybe I can say content. Then now the values will be here. Then the values I can use something like a lorem text. Okay, let me try to just copy this from maybe where, maybe about this text there. On this post, then I can place them there. So with these objects, you'll actually not need to split the lines. You'll not need to split the lines. Now this is the disadvantage on this strings text. You'll not need to split, otherwise you'll get that error. So like this, but then what I'll do, let me just copy this part of the content up to here, and then okay, let me just paste it there also, and then let me see where it is ending. Okay, yeah, so this is the reason. And then also here I can have something like that, and then now on the here maybe we can have, for example, the post title, and then now the description. So here it will be now post, then content, and then of course on this content we can be able to also add in some so you can see now we're having some content to it. Maybe if we could try to at least add in some styling on them. So let me say class name, maybe text gray of around, let's say, this color, and then another thing, it will be having some margin top of, let's say, 2, and then also margin bottom of also 2. Yeah, something like that. It's not that bad. So I believe now it is somehow good. So you're able to like the the posts. So this is a simple example of also this one you can as well do a lot of styling, but then we don't want to go into that. So this was more to demonstrate how you can create a very simple application, application with React. So these are the navigation. You know how you're able to link them. So guys, allow me to stop it here. I don't want to make the video very much long, but in a nutshell, this is what you might need to know about React. But then remember, it's very profound, it's very broad with a lot of features, but you'll be able to understand them as you work on different projects. But within this channel, I'll be able to create some other projects that you will be fetching data from an API. So we'll be creating some full stack projects, and we'll be fetching some APIs. I will be fetching some APIs, and I will be able to understand the usage of the useEffect well, especially when fetching the backend or maybe some data from a server and some additional things. So after this project, we'll try to create another course, and then after that, we'll be able to do some projects that you'll be using the React knowledge and some additional backend development skills, just to make sure that we have some full stack projects. But then in a nutshell, this is all you need to know about React. But please subscribe, like, and share this video to your friends so that we can increase the reach, and also the channel may also grow. So guys, until next time, this is Nehemiah. Goodbye.